Hi everyone, today, let's watch together how a queen, as the mother of her children, teaches them how to inherit the throne in the future. With the series, Under the Queen's Umbrella, the princes of this land of Kimchi have a tough life. Barely in their teens, they're already forced to learn etiquette and proper conduct. Looking at the lively writing in the book, one prince feels dizzy and faint. The other princes are blushing because the youngest, the 10-year-old prince, is full of question marks. But when they hear the teacher's lecture, everyone sits up straight. At 20, 3 times every 3 days is best. At 30, once every 10 days is best. Then, one prince asks, "I'm only 19, so doesn't that mean I could do it 7 times a day?" Everyone bursts out laughing, unable to believe this prince is so shameless. Behind these seemingly happy princes, how much heartache do their mothers, the concubine, feel? Inside this seemingly peaceful palace is actually a battlefield where people kill without drawing blood. The woman walking in front is the queen of the central palace. Don't let her high status in the inner palace fool you. Even though she has 5 sons, only one is more outstanding than the other 4. Today is the day the king and queen dowager personally come to lecture. All the concubines personally escort their sons, fearing they'll be late, and rush to the desks early before class starts. But the queen's 3rd son is still indulging in pleasure-seeking. Early in the morning, the queen leaves the palace and goes to the 2 gatehouses. She takes off the hairpin from her head and barges inside. A couple is lying inside the room. She immediately throws off the blanket. These 2 sleeping soundly are completely unaware. She orders her son to be taken away. The girl finally wakes up and questions who this woman in front of her is. The queen rushes forward, aiming the hairpin directly at the girl's head, driving it down from her forehead to her chin. I, in these eyes, am seeing a mother who would do anything for her children. The girl sees the phoenix on the hairpin and realizes this is the queen. The queen has just taken away her disappointing 3rd son. After a difficult time dragging her 3rd son back to the school, the palace maids report that the prince can't be found anywhere. After searching for a while, she finally finds her youngest son sleeping in the study. Then, the queen frantically pulls the youngest along. At this time, the king and queen dowager have already entered. The queen manages to bring her son just in the nick of time. But as the king begins the lesson, her 2nd son pushes the door open and walks in. Sure enough, this leaves her feeling helpless. The king begins to question the princes. All of them answer very well and can even explain Confucianism concisely. After class, the queen dowager calls the queen aside for a private talk, scolding her for not knowing how to raise her children. Unexpectedly, the princes in the school are so unruly. However, the queen doesn't back down. She says this is only a place to teach the princes knowledge, and no matter how good they are at learning, it's useless. The most important thing is for her princes to learn how to be rulers at the office of royal lectures. The queen's greatest pride is her eldest son, the crown prince. Not only is he good at learning, but he also has a kind heart and is the successor designated by the king. After the lesson, Queen Yongjian went to the royal lecture hall to visit the crown prince. Unexpectedly, during their conversation, the crown prince suddenly fainted. All the guards and palace maids rushed to surround him in a panic. After summoning the royal physician to examine him, it was discovered that the crown prince was suffering from a blood disorder. For Queen Yongjian, this was an unbelievable shock. The crown prince was about to ascend the throne, but suddenly he had contracted a deadly illness. This caused her, a woman always filled with pride, to suddenly collapse. Within the deep palace walls, a queen's status relied on her son. If her son were to die, her position as Queen Yongjian would be difficult to secure. At this moment, the royal physician delivered even more terrifying news. The crown prince's illness was exactly the same as the illness that had killed the previous grandson of the king, Hong Th letter 1 EBF T letter 1 ED, a long time ago. This caused Queen Yongjian's mind to spin. It turned out that the current prince was not the real grandson of the king. The real grandson of the king had passed away long ago from the blood disorder. The current Grand Queen Dowager had placed her own son in his place, and now wanted to drive Queen Yongjian and her children out of the palace. The situation at this moment was such that they absolutely couldn't let the Grand Queen Dowager find out. The most urgent task was to find the royal physician, but to get the royal physician to leave the palace, they needed the prince's permission. Queen Yongjian braved the rain to run to the prince's palace, but a eunuch reported that the prince was already asleep. Seeing the white shoes placed outside the door, Queen Yongjian understood the situation and could only return first. Unexpectedly, the Grand Queen Dowager suddenly appeared, asking where she had been all day. Today, your 4 children ganged up to bully royal noble consorts Hoang Kui and Han Sun. You truly have no respect for anyone. Queen Yongjian knew that her children were not the type to bully others. There must be hidden reasons. But the Grand Queen Dowager sternly said that she had already punished them, and then turned and left. She was very cunning and had guessed that something must have happened to the Crown Prince, which was why Queen Yongjian was entering the palace so late. At this point, Queen Yongjian quickly went to the training grounds to find her sons. It turned out that this afternoon, after the lesson, Royal Noble Consort's son, Yuaisong, had been beaten by Queen Yongjian's second son. Unexpectedly, the Grand Queen Dowager had witnessed this scene. Without asking the whole story, she punished the princes to kneel down and confess their sins. But when Yuaisong returned to the rear palace, he was punished by his mother. Royal Noble Consort continuously whipped his legs until the whip broke, and only then did she stop. It turned out that just now, Yuaisong had publicly humiliated Queen Yongjian, which was why her princes had beaten him. Queen Yongjian's eldest son is the heir apparent, the one most favored by the king, but he is not the eldest son. Yuaisong did not accept or give in to the injustice. Because of that, let alone the eldest, on what basis should they sit on your head? Royal Noble Consort was even more scheming. She taught and disciplined her son loudly. You must turn it into motivation. Motivation for you to seize back your royal seat. Only if your abilities are better than Queen Yongjian's eldest son can you regain the title of heir apparent. Otherwise, there is only death. The Grand Queen Dowager had arrived before the Crown Prince's sick. Queen Yongjian arrived later and was greatly startled. But you can't hide the truth forever. The Grand Queen Dowager said that she was very clear about this type of illness. Years ago, the current prince's older brother also died from it. Queen Yongjian continued to insist that the heir apparent had begun treatment. The Grand Queen Dowager intentionally said, in the past, that person also had treatment, but passed away very quickly as well. Now that your next children are worthless, the position of Crown Prince can only be given to someone else. Queen Yongjian gritted her teeth and accused the Grand Queen Dowager. The one who is sick right now is your own grandson. But the Grand Queen Dowager said that the throne was the top priority. The Grand Queen Dowager, in Queen Yongjian's eyes at this moment, was truly cold-blooded and merciless. The Grand Queen Dowager got up, preparing to leave, but suddenly thought of something, turned her head and said, "Because you had the merit of giving birth to the heir apparent, I have tolerated you for so long. Therefore, do your best to protect my grandson." At this moment, Queen Yongjian was extremely flustered, not knowing what the Grand Queen Dowager would do. Sure enough, the next day, the Empress Dowager summoned His Highness and suggested choosing someone to be a study companion for the Crown Prince. Perhaps one of the princes could be chosen as the Crown Prince's study companion, which would not only allow the other princes to train, but also allow them to learn how to manage an entire nation. His Highness agreed. Thus, the consorts began discussing how to get their sons into the position of study companion. But only the honorable consort reminded them. This position is ominous. We don't even know what the next 2 minutes will bring, so everyone should think carefully before doing anything. The others suddenly remembered the Empress Dowager from the past. She wasn't the Empress consort, but still managed to put her son on the throne. She definitely has secrets no one else can know. Therefore, they eagerly brought gifts to the Empress Dowager's palace. The Empress Dowager said that wanting a prince to become the heir was not a matter of overnight success. Education had to begin even before birth. Then she took out a thick book. That night, the old palace maid asked, "Could it be that the Empress Dowager gave the book to the consorts without them using it?" The Empress Dowager said, "That's right, but the other consorts are still lining up outside the door. I've prepared an identical copy for each of them, so they think they alone have this book. After that, they'll willingly pledge loyalty and obey me." On the other side, the Empress consort also learned of this news. The other consorts were like tigers eyeing the Crown Prince's position, while her son was in such a state. At this moment, the Empress consort looked at her eldest son who was suffering from a terminal illness, and she felt immense pity for him. She then remembered the Empress Dowager's battle for the throne years ago, to knock the current Empress Dowager off that high position. Moreover, the Crown Prince at that time also died of a blood disease just like her son now. All of this was similar to what happened that year. Could it be a coincidence? The Empress consort immediately questioned the palace maid who had once served the previous Empress Dowager about what exactly had happened. But the palace maid didn't dare to speak, only saying a single, meaningful sentence. "The Empress Dowager will do anything for His Highness." The Empress consort was despondent. It seemed that the only way for her to protect her position was to personally visit the previous Empress consort. The Empress consort arrived at an old house. Unexpectedly, the previous Empress consort, who had been beautiful, ended up living out the rest of her days in this old house, resigned. Hearing the Empress consort mention the events of that year, she immediately closed the door without answering, then chased the Empress consort away. "Go back quickly, or you'll be accused of treason." But at this point, the Empress consort only had the previous Empress consort as her only hope for salvation and directly knelt down in the pouring rain. The previous Empress consort softened and finally said to the Empress consort, "The Crown Prince's blood disease may not be hereditary. Your Crown Prince also died of a blood disease that year, but I truly believe that my son's death was not because of blood disease, because the imperial physician had long told me that my son had recovered from the illness. Moreover, immediately after my son died, the pharmacy where my son was treated was burned to the ground. The court physicians involved in treating my son also died in the fire." At this time, the Empress consort understood the previous Empress consort's implications. The previous Crown Prince was killed by the current Empress Dowager. Of course, the previous Empress consort didn't say it outright. She only told the Empress consort, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Back then, I also had 4 sons, but in order to protect them, so that the 4 brothers wouldn't kill each other, I only cared for and looked after the Crown Prince, while the other 3 children were loosely educated. It was done superficially." However, when the former Crown Prince was assassinated, the remaining 3 princes were deemed incapable of ascending the throne. This inadvertently provided the current Queen Dowager with an opportunity, allowing her son to become king. The father of the current Queen Consort was accused of treason, and her position as Queen Consort was also revoked. In order to protect her own life and the lives of her 3 children, she had to abandon everything and live in this dilapidated house. But the Queen Dowager still regarded her remaining children as thorns in her side, so she sent people to kill them right before her eyes. Hearing this, the Queen Consort wept bitterly. She knew she couldn't possibly devise a foolproof plan for revenge, fearing that she would be driven to the same desperate straits as the former Queen Consort. After returning to the palace, the words of the former Queen Consort kept echoing in her head. "If I could go back, even if I were criticized and called selfish or despicable, I would do anything to protect my children. If only I could be Queen Consort again and have another chance." Finally, she decided to have her remaining sons participate in the selection of royal lecturers. Therefore, she immediately summoned her sons. Fearing that the prince's morale would become rebellious, the Queen Consort still chose to prioritize etiquette before academics. But no matter how gently she spoke, it was to no avail. The second prince said, "Mother, please allow me to marry first so that I can leave the palace." Thus, the other princes successively demanded to be married. The Queen Consort could only endure, and endure again. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, she immediately erupted at her sons. Only then did they lower their heads and admit their mistakes, but 1 or 2 still showed a lack of respect. Seeing her sons' retreating figures, the Queen Consort couldn't help but exclaim, "Why don't you understand your mother's heart? This is the only way for you to save your lives." Feeling helpless, the Queen Consort could only turn to their teacher, wanting to hear his assessment of her sons, so that she could know which son to place her hopes on for a breakthrough. But when she heard the teacher's comments about her sons, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning in broad daylight. Out of the 4 sons, 3 were on the verge of being expelled because they didn't attend enough classes. The most promising one was the youngest. He hunted and studied enough. Learning this news, the Queen Consort immediately went to find the youngest prince. Coincidentally, she met him in the garden, seeing him hurrying, seemingly heading towards an abandoned palace. Suspicious, the queen consort followed him. After following for a while, she discovered that her son had entered an old room in the palace. No matter how she thought about it, she never expected her fourth son to be homosexual. She was so shocked that she almost screamed, hurriedly covering her mouth and running away. The palace maid was also curious and peeked in to see what was happening. The man inside skillfully applied powder, gently groomed his eyebrows, and then applied a touch of pink lipstick, before turning around, revealing himself as a beauty as exquisite as an angel. The fat palace maid hurriedly ran to find the queen consort. It turned out that the queen consort had hidden in her secret chamber. As the queen consort of a nation, she couldn't show her weakness to anyone. Only in here could she let go of everything and have a good cry. She knew she had to help her son keep this secret, otherwise, in the deep palace, she might not even have a place to stand. After class ended, the palace maid reported to the queen consort that he soon had returned to the palace. The queen consort asked her if she had seen him with her own eyes. The palace maid had not seen him with her own eyes. The queen consort still felt uneasy, suspecting that he might go to that room again to put on makeup, so she quickly followed. If nothing unexpected happened, then the unexpected had already occurred. Noble consort Cao discovered that Jaixiong was sneakily going into a small corner, so she followed. Unexpectedly, when she looked into the room, she was shocked and couldn't believe her eyes. She hurriedly went to report this to the Empress Dowager. Upon hearing this, the Empress Dowager immediately sternly reprimanded noble consort Cao, saying, "This is no small matter. If it's true, the prince must die. But if it's false, falsely accusing the prince is also a capital crime." At this point, noble consort Cao began to hesitate. "I'm not entirely sure." "You're not sure, yet you dared to come before me to accuse him?" The Empress Dowager asked if she had told anyone else. Noble consort Cao respectfully knelt and said she hadn't told anyone. The Empress Dowager warned her to forget about this matter, swallow it, and never mention it to anyone else. Noble consort Cao hurriedly agreed. The Empress Dowager was cunning. How could she let this secret go after learning it? She quietly went to Jaixiong's dressing room alone, used a branch to poke at Jaixiong's makeup, opened his powder box and knocked out the powder puff, wiped the stick, and then carefully wiped her hands with a cloth. Then, she looked at Jaixiong's feminine items with even more disgust. She had already come up with a malicious plan in her mind. The next day, she took the prince for a walk with her. At this time, the Empress consort, upon hearing the news, also rushed to join them. The Empress Dowager said, "Good, then you can come along too then." She deliberately suggested going to a place they had never been before. The Empress consort knew Jaixiong's secret had been revealed. The Empress Dowager used the guise of taking a stroll, but led them to the place where Hai Xin did his makeup. At this time, the fat palace maid suddenly came up with a plan and rushed to report that there was a problem in the kitchen, hoping the Empress consort would handle it. The Empress consort had a way to deal with the Empress Dowager in her heart. She said that because she was still lacking in managing the palace affairs, she hoped the Empress Dowager would go there with her. But unexpectedly, the cunning Empress Dowager was not easy to deal with, saying that she had never sat in the position of Empress consort and couldn't give her any advice. "Originally, I just wanted to take you to see the scenery." The Empress Dowager revealed a meaningful smile and left with the prince. The Empress consort saw that the Empress Dowager wanted to push her son to his death, and she would never allow this to happen. So, she turned and ran in the opposite direction. When the Empress Dowager's group arrived at the palace, they discovered that the palace was on fire. The servants said that this place was deserted, so there were no casualties. The Empress Dowager wasn't focused. He used this method to destroy the evidence. After returning to the palace, she went to find the Empress consort and reminded her that there were only two paths to take now. One was to completely cure the crown prince's illness. The other was to let the useless sons obediently yield their position, and she would choose a suitable prince to inherit the throne. So, the person who plans to bring down the crown prince and establish another prince as the heir is you, isn't it? Yes, that's certainly my specialty. I've done it once, so I'll definitely dare to do it a second time. The Empress Dowager, because she wanted her son to ascend the throne, killed the previous Empress consort's crown prince, blamed the entire previous Empress consort's family for treason, drove her out of the palace, and killed all the remaining sons. The Empress Dowager is now the Empress Dowager. But when she learned that her grandson had a blood disorder, she decided to abandon this grandson and conspired to choose someone else to ascend the throne. She loved the imperial concubine's son the most. In fact, the imperial concubine's son was the eldest son that year. But because the imperial concubine's family was powerful, the Empress Dowager feared that it would affect the court. So, she chose someone of ordinary origin to be the Empress consort. The imperial concubine has always suspected this. Today, the Grand Royal Dowager summoned Royal Consort Guayin, feigning regret that she was unable to persuade His Majesty to make Guayin's son the Crown Prince years ago, causing her to suffer the indignity of being only a royal consort. Otherwise, you would be the Queen Consort right now. Royal Consort Guayin, a woman of shrewd calculation, knew it was the Grand Royal Dowager who had whispered in His Majesty's ear back then. These words were merely a probe of her intentions. So, she replied, those matters are in the past. The Grand Royal Dowager then asked why Guayin hadn't allowed Yuaisong to participate in the Royal Study Companion competition. At this, Guayin poured the Grand Royal Dowager a cup of tea, saying, that position isn't suitable for Yuaisong. Then what about the Crown Prince position? Guayin paused. This was the answer the Grand Royal Dowager wanted. After returning to her palace, Guayin instructed her son to register for the Royal Study Companion competition. This was a good opportunity to prove his abilities to His Majesty. You must put all your effort into all the things that come afterward, and I will take care of everything else for you. What is meant to return will return to its owner. That position originally belonged to you. I will help you take it back. When Hai Sang saw that his storage room had been burned, he went inside and saw that all his clothes and makeup had been burned, and the mirror lay on the ground shattered into pieces. He ran to find people to put out the fire, and when he asked how they knew this place was on fire and came to put it out, he learned that it was the Queen Consort who had told them. That's Jaeseong understood everything. It was all his mother's doing. He immediately angrily sought out his mother. Mother did this, didn't you? Correct, it was me. Why did you do that? That's the place where I can truly be myself. Why did you do such a thing? I want to know why you burned that place down. Oh, then let me tell you, follow me. In the heavy rain, the Queen Consort, wearing a black outfit, waited for Hai Sang. She handed him a box and told him to follow her. Passing through a small alley, the Queen Consort brought him to a flower room. A palace maid brought him a woman's outfit and told him to stay there alone. After he changed into the woman's clothes, an artist painted his portrait. Very quickly, his portrait was completed. This was the gift the Queen Consort was giving him. He understood his mother's feelings. She told him that everyone has their own thoughts. However, there are some things that can never be known by others. No matter what, just showing that portrait could reveal the appearance he wished to become. Only then did Sang understand his mother's intention. He asked his mother if she wasn't angry. At first, I was truly disappointed. However, I was never angry. She gave Hai Sang a hairpin. From now on, you will be the princess I cherish. The two walked in the rainy night. The Queen Consort had used her forgiving heart to protect her son, truly the great love of a mother. The Crown Prince called his second brother, Si Nam, to him. He told his younger brother that he hoped he could be his royal study companion. It turned out that when he was young, the Crown Prince lived outside the palace. The first time, the Crown Prince met him practicing archery during a holiday. Knowing that the person in front of him was his own older brother, he excitedly dragged his older brother off to fight. What are you guys planning to do? I have an older brother too. My older brother knows how to fight. His older brother had never fought before, and was a little scared, but for his younger brother, he also mustered the courage to rush forward. Unexpectedly, the final result was getting punched so hard his nose bled. The older brother clenched his fist and said, "It's okay. Next time, I'll definitely help you fight back." The younger brother obediently nodded. From then on, the two often practiced together, from winter to summer, and these were the most beautiful and happy times of their lives. The Crown Prince said, "I hope second brother can take care of my son," leading him as both a father and a teacher. Seongnam, upon hearing this and sensing something was amiss, suddenly remembered the Queen Consort's abrupt request for them to participate in the Royal Secretary Selection competition. Seongnam, quick-witted as he was, seemed to grasp the situation and frantically raced towards the schoolhouse. Just moments before the registration deadline, he submitted his name card. The teacher, seemingly anticipating his arrival, was deliberately waiting there for him to register. He then said to him, "Your brothers have all signed up as well." On the other side, the queen consort, upon hearing that all her sons had registered, was shocked and felt like the sun had risen in the west. Overwhelmed with emotion, she almost shed tears. She told her portly lady-in-waiting to make thorough preparations. Thus, the queen consort brought out all her books and spent the entire night studying, meticulously annotating them for her sons. She wrote down important outlines, key points, and essential information that needed to be memorized, all on sticky notes. Meanwhile, the other princes in the palace also stayed up all night studying. Some secretly sought tutors, while others had their own mothers sitting and studying alongside them. Everyone wanted to win the position of royal secretary. The following morning, the royal physician reported that all the records of the late crown prince from that year had been lost in a sudden fire. Furthermore, the royal physicians from that time had gradually left the palace, one by one, and no one knew the details of the late crown prince's case. The queen consort immediately detected something unsettling. How could so many coincidences occur? Therefore, she ordered her subordinates to quickly locate those royal physicians from that year, insisting they find at least one to return. She called her sons to her, laid out all the materials she had prepared, and instructed them to review the contents based on her notes. However, the sons completely lacked confidence in their mother's abilities. The queen consort said, "What do you think allowed me to rise to this position back then? All of this is predicted test material. You must study all of it." Hearing this, the sons complained, "We only signed up to avoid embarrassing you, mother. We didn't expect you to take it so seriously. If it really comes down to it, only our youngest brother, Jae-sung, should participate." The queen consort looked into her son's eyes, speechless. "From now on, your academic performance must not fall below standard. You must achieve at least a passing grade. You've changed. Why do you suddenly have these kinds of ideas? I don't want to lose." On the other side, His Majesty also obtained the list of participants and was unexpectedly surprised to find that all his sons had signed up. The teacher from the Royal Academy asked His Majesty why he was holding the competition. His Majesty said, "Although the Crown Prince is highly knowledgeable, he is too rigid and lacks flexibility. I hope it breaks the rules right now. That is why I selected a prince whose views differ from the Crown Prince to be the royal secretary." That evening, royal consort Hwang called 3 teachers to tutor Uisong and bribed the academy director to provide her with the test questions. All she needed to do was prepare carefully for His Majesty's questions. A major battle had erupted. On the first day of the exam, the royal consorts all encouraged their sons to do their best. Meanwhile, the queen consort didn't have time to encourage her sons because she received news that the crown prince had fallen into a coma. She rushed, stricken with grief, to her son's palace. This morning her son had been fine. Why was he now unconscious? The royal physician told her that the crown prince's condition was worsening, and the periods of unconsciousness were becoming longer. A palace maid came to report to her that rumors had spread throughout the palace that the crown prince was suffering from a terminal illness. If the crown prince did not regain consciousness between now and evening, these rumors would surely be considered the truth. The royal physician said that treating this disease was not simple. However, the crown prince's absence from the palace would create chaos. The queen consort immediately made the decision to cut all of the crown prince's scheduled activities. The competition began. His Highness abolished the old rules, instructing the princes to divide this circle into 2 other circles. The princes tried their best to use their imaginations. Very quickly, time was up. This test was created by His Highness himself, so he would be the judge. He picked out a test that was different from the others. "I never even thought of this answer. How interesting." This test belonged to Jae-sung. When the results were in, the 3rd prince failed, while the 2nd prince topped the rankings. Seongnam's performance left the other royal consorts quite speechless. The queen consort came to see His Highness. She said she had a matter concerning the crown prince that needed discussing. The queen consort asked His Highness for permission for the crown prince to travel to the hot springs to prevent dermatological ailments. Afterwards, the queen consort secretly moved the crown prince back to her palace, ordering the royal physicians to do their utmost to find a cure. Seongnam, realizing the fire at the abandoned building was connected to his mother, the queen consort, rushed there to demand an explanation. Where is she? Upon entering the queen consort's chambers, he inadvertently discovered his elder brother being treated. He sought out his mother and demanded answers. The queen consort, knowing she could no longer conceal the truth from her second son, revealed everything. The crown prince was suffering from anemia, but all known methods of treatment had been destroyed. His condition was extremely serious and potentially fatal. Therefore, she had been concealing everything in order to treat the crown prince. Upon learning the truth, Seongnam decided to leave the palace. He traveled to a rural area, seeking out a child informant to inquire about a physician who could treat anemia. However, Seongnam realized the group of people resembled swindlers. He drew his sword and held it to their necks. He produced some money and demanded to know the whereabouts of a doctor who could treat anemia. The two men's eyes lit up at the sight of the money. They gave him the information about the doctor. Seongnam quickly found the doctor's place. He explained the situation to him in detail. However, the doctor paid him no attention. He said he was very busy and told him to leave. Seongnam then took the initiative to help him treat a patient. Seeing this, the doctor asked him about the condition of his elder brother. Afterwards, he gave him a prescription. He also insisted that he had to go to the pharmacy he designated. He took all of Seongnam's money, saying, "This is the money for the medicine. You just need to go there and say my name." Seongnam found the pharmacy, but when he read the doctor's name to the shopkeeper, he realized he had been scammed. Seongnam had been swindled out of all his money, so no one would sell him the medicine. Suddenly, a young woman appeared. The woman noticed that the young nobleman had an extraordinary appearance. After learning that he didn't have enough money to buy the medicine, she took out her family's heirloom to pawn. She said, "This is the remedy my mother left behind." She said she wanted to help him. Grateful for the woman's kindness, Seongnam said he would help her redeem the item in 10 days. She was extremely pleased. The woman's servant asked why she had helped him. She said that to catch a big fish, you have to be willing to use good bait. Seongnam had no idea that this unexpected encounter was a plan orchestrated by her. She did it simply because she wanted to meet him. After purchasing the prescription, the royal physician told Jae-sung that he couldn't use a folk remedy to save the crown prince. If something went wrong, he couldn't bear the responsibility. When the queen consort returned and checked on the situation, she also felt that they couldn't use this method. No matter how much Seongnam persuaded her, the queen consort refused. She couldn't risk using this method on the crown prince. Meanwhile, the results of the previous day's examination were in. Based on the assessments of the exam proctors, Seongnam had passed the selection process. The Queen Dowager summoned the Queen Consort and told her that the key to passing the examination was mainly based on ability. She also said that the Queen Consort's sons were all useless. "I warn you, the Crown Prince must appear healthy on that day. If he cannot appear, then I'm sorry, we'll have to put someone else on the Crown Prince's throne." The Queen Consort, looking at her seriously ill son, knew the Queen Dowager was trying to depose her son. "If your sons can't become the Crown Prince at that time, then you and your son will surely die." She absolutely had to cure her eldest son's illness. At this point, she had no choice but to take a gamble. She decided to use the prescription that Seongnam had brought back. She would accept whatever the consequences might be. Meanwhile, the Crown Princess's due date had arrived. All the concubines were waiting with bated breath. While they pretended to be concerned about the Crown Princess's condition, they were really waiting to see the Queen get humiliated. When the Queen arrived, they didn't see the Crown Prince anywhere, and everyone wore smug expressions. Just then, His Majesty and the Queen Dowager also arrived. The Queen Dowager asked, "Why hasn't the Crown Prince appeared yet?" Just as they were all convinced the Crown Prince wouldn't show up, the Crown Prince and his princess consort entered. His Majesty, seeing his son looking healthy, was overjoyed. Everyone else couldn't believe their eyes, because the Crown Prince's good health meant that no one could touch the throne. Ever since using Seongnam's remedy, the Crown Prince's health had been excellent. However, just when everyone thought the Crown Prince was healthy, during a lesson the next day, right in front of His Majesty, the teachers, and the princes. The crown prince vomited blood. The queen frantically rushed to cradle her son in her arms. His Majesty hastily questioned the royal physician about this, and was informed that the crown prince was in critical condition, and had probably been ill for a long time. Heartbroken, His Majesty made a decision that from now on, he would be the one to decide how to care for the crown prince, and demanded that the queen stay away from the crown prince, not participate in his treatment, and that no one be allowed to see him. The queen's remaining sons arrived in front of the crown prince's palace, wanting to visit, but were stopped by the soldiers. Just then, the queen dowager arrived and ordered them to disperse. Seongnam questioned the queen dowager about preventing them from visiting their brother. The queen dowager walked up to Seongnam and said, "You've been in the palace for so long, and you still haven't learned the palace rules? I've reminded you before, you must swallow your feelings, close your eyes to what you see, and forget what you hear. And if you have something to say, you must keep your mouth shut if you want to protect what's precious." At that moment, the queen was transcribing Buddhist scriptures in her study. She tried to write as quickly as possible, hoping only to meet Lord Sangjian, who was close to His Majesty. When he arrived and took the copied scriptures from the queen, she immediately inquired about the crown prince's condition, and warned him not to leave the crown prince alone with the royal physician and the other doctors under any circumstances. She asked him to relay these words to His Majesty. Afterward, she tore up all the scriptures she had just copied and asked him to come back for them tomorrow. At the same time, royal consort Guayin was plotting to overthrow the crown prince with the military commander and the chief eunuch. Seongnam, anxious because he hadn't heard any news of his mother, snuck into the queen's palace. Because he couldn't enter the queen's room, Seongnam spoke to her in another room. The queen worried that if His Majesty found out, he would be beheaded. But Seongnam came because he needed to verify something. He asked his mother if the crown prince had ever suffered from blood stasis before. The queen said he never had. Seongnam asserted that the medicine he brought back was causing the crown prince problems, but the queen insisted that his condition had improved after taking the medicine. Afraid that Seongnam would do something rash, she told him, "The crown prince's worsening condition is not your fault, and no one must find out about the medicine and herbs brought in from outside. If there are any problems, let the queen handle them herself." Seongnam once again broke into the prison cell where the royal physician, who had been treating the crown prince for a long time, was being held. The royal physician insisted that the medicine he had been using could not have caused any particular issues. However, he conceded that even if it was the same kind of medicine, the medicinal properties could differ, making it impossible to say for sure. Seongnam asked who had prescribed the medication. He only said that it was a doctor who treated the common people. However, the royal physician kowtowed before Seongnam, saying that he would absolutely not breathe a word about the medicine, because if the prescription were to be revealed, he would lose his life. Having achieved his objective, Seongnam left. But at that moment, a masked man entered. He took the royal physician to an abandoned room and interrogated him, asking if Seongnam had instigated him. The royal physician said Seongnam had only come to inquire about the crown prince's condition. The masked man then stabbed the royal physician. With his last breath, the royal physician uttered the name that the dowager queen wanted to hear most. The queen consort ordered him. The palace maid was summoned again to retrieve the Buddhist scriptures that the queen consort was transcribing as punishment. But this time, the palace maid told the queen consort, "His Majesty has decreed that you no longer need to perform this penance." This also meant that she could no longer gain any information whatsoever about the crown prince. Helpless, the queen consort had no choice but to bribe the court ladies and eunuchs in the crown prince's palace to monitor the royal physicians and obtain the prescriptions that were being prepared for the crown prince, so she could have them tested for poison. Through this, she learned that the crown prince had stopped vomiting blood but remained unconscious. A bigger problem loomed: the conspiracy of chief state counselor and royal noble consort. If they were working together, there could only be one reason: to depose the crown prince. Very quickly, His Majesty received a memorial calling for the deposition of the crown prince. But His Majesty quickly refused. These memorials for deposition continued to arrive frequently. The Dowager Queen met with His Majesty. She stated that because her son was no longer swayed by the high officials, he would not easily accept the deposition of the crown prince. Therefore, it's necessary to wake him up. Soon after, the vice minister, along with other high-ranking officials in the court, knelt before the palace, pleading with His Majesty to depose the crown prince. Upon hearing this news, the queen consort immediately disguised herself as a servant and fled the palace. She went to a small pavilion and then sent someone to the previous queen consort to seek her counsel. She wanted to ask the previous queen consort whether the previous crown prince had definitely not died from anemia but from another cause, and if there was any evidence to prove this. The previous queen consort smiled and said that she hoped the queen consort's son would die saving the world because the current dynasty was built on the blood of her son. The king, who was praised as a sage ruler, had usurped the throne. The queen consort frankly said that if it was heaven's will, she would obey. But if someone was maliciously plotting against her son, she would ruthlessly punish those who had harmed him. Therefore, she begged the previous queen consort to tell her the truth. The previous queen consort agreed to speak with one condition. If I ask you for something in the future, you must agree unconditionally. Then, she told the queen consort that the previous crown prince had not coughed up blood, but his body had unexplained wounds. This meant that the symptoms of the current crown prince were different from those of the previous crown prince. The previous queen consort confirmed that her son had been murdered. Although she didn't know how, she knew who had killed her son because the culprit had directly admitted it to her. And that person was none other than the Dowager Queen. At this moment, the high officials unanimously requested the dethronement of the crown prince. His Highness was being driven into a corner when the Dowager Queen appeared. She demanded that His Highness make a decision, either disband them or agree with their opinion. She further warned His Highness, if you don't heed their request, you will be overthrown at any time, because they are the ones who put you on the throne. Just then, the queen consort entered and questioned the high officials whether they were wishing for the crown prince's death. Then, the queen consort went and asked each official individually whether the request to dethrone the crown prince was just. Has the crown prince ever done anything unjust before? Has the crown prince ever indulged in wine and women to the detriment of court affairs? So what crime has the crown prince committed to warrant dethronement? If there is a crime, then it is the queen consort and these officials who failed to protect the crown prince's safety. Reviving a crown prince who is ill is what preserves the safety of the nation. The chief general stepped forward, asking how she could be here when she was supposed to be confined to the palace. His Highness stepped forward to defend her. Then he said that what the queen consort said was also his intention, and demanded that the high officials not discuss the matter of dethroning the crown prince any further. Faced with His Highness's authority, the high officials stood down one by one. Right then, the queen consort received news that the crown prince had awakened but was in critical condition. When she ran to him, seeing the crown prince lying motionless, she wailed in anguish. The crown prince had passed away. When the chief general received the assignment to investigate the crown prince's death, royal concubine Gui came to find her father and told him not to investigate further, because royal concubine Gui had ordered a physician to administer poison, causing the crown prince to vomit blood and die. She explained to her father that she only gave a very small amount of poison, enough to ensure that the crown prince's illness would not be cured, not to take his life. But she didn't expect the crown prince's body to be so weak. The chief general rebuked his daughter for not discussing such a major matter with him beforehand. In a fit of anger, royal concubine Gui vented her resentment. She believed that the queen consort had nothing to compare to her, yet she was able to sit in the position of head of the inner palace above her. She had to reclaim justice for every humiliation from that year, and she was determined to put her son, Yuaisong, on the throne as crown prince, to set everything back on the right track. The next day, the chief general led a crowd to request that His Highness appoint a new crown prince. His Highness scolded them. The crown prince's remains are not yet cold, and the cause of death has not been determined, so how can you easily install another crown prince? Before the cause of the crown prince's death is clearly investigated, the position of crown prince will remain vacant. At the same time, the Dowager Queen was creating trouble outside, calling her nephews into her main palace and asking them, "What is the most important thing when being a crown prince?" The princes replied, "It is to have the ability to govern the country." Someone replied, "First, one must have filial piety." The Dowager Queen nodded and smiled. then deliberately revealed important information to them. Even if you are not the eldest son, as long as you possess enough qualifications, anyone has a chance to ascend to the throne as crown prince. As soon as the word spread, the concubines in the palace immediately felt a renewed sense of hope, striving to arrange things for their sons. Even the queen consort entered a state of war and summoned her sons, demanding they hold themselves to the highest standards to prove they were qualified to shoulder such a great responsibility. Otherwise, the position of crown prince would fall into someone else's hands. Suddenly, she noticed that her second son, Seongnam, was absent. When she sent someone to his chambers, they found the food left outside his door untouched for a long time. The servants reported that he hadn't eaten in 3 days. The queen consort carried the tray of food directly into his room. As soon as she entered, she drew back the curtains, throwing them wide open. Seongnam said he no longer wanted to stay in the palace. "Only elder brother wanted me to stay here, but now that he's gone, there's no reason for me to remain." The queen consort turned to him and said, "Years ago, the crown prince defied the elders and risked his own position to bring you into this palace. It wasn't just elder brother. Now that he's suddenly gone, you still have his nephews, nieces, and younger siblings that he left behind. And what did elder brother ultimately hope for you? Think carefully about it." Seongnam recalled the days he spent learning calligraphy with his elder brother outside the palace, and he suddenly realized the responsibility he needed to bear. The next day, the queen consort continued to train her sons, ordering them to immerse themselves in frigid water that was -5 degrees Celsius, while continuously adding ice. Her sons couldn't understand this bizarre method. The queen consort explained that it was to train their willpower and also to improve their physical health. It was a secret training method of the royal family. Suddenly, Seongnam opened the door and entered. The queen consort pointed to the pool and told him to get in. The 4 brothers hugged each other, shivering, while the queen consort smiled. It had been a long time since she'd seen that. Unbeknownst to her, a plot targeting her was already brewing. To prevent Grand Prince Wonsong from being chosen as the crown prince, Commander-in-Chief spread rumors that the queen consort had poisoned her own son to death, aiming to install Grand Prince Wonsong as the crown prince and make Dowager Queen Pongron the regent. Soon, the rumors spread throughout the palace, with everyone saying that the queen consort had poisoned her own son. This was just the first step in the commander-in-chief's plan. The next day, the queen consort heard that the commander-in-chief had arrested and interrogated her people. She immediately went to the execution ground and questioned him as to why he was interrogating people without her permission. He used His Majesty as a shield. It was His Majesty who requested that the cause of the Crown Prince's death be investigated. Since the Crown Prince died after secretly visiting the Queen Consort's main palace for treatment, it's only natural that I interrogate her people. The Queen Consort moved closer to the Commander-in-Chief. If anyone tries to harm me, no matter who they are, I will ferociously bite and devour them. Her powerful aura immediately intensified, leaving the Commander-in-Chief speechless, watching as she led her people back to the main palace. The Queen Consort and the others discussed strategies, saying that they needed to contact the royal physician immediately and instruct him to keep quiet about the Crown Prince having taken medicine from outside the palace. But at that moment, someone was eavesdropping outside Ti So-yang. Bogum's mother turned pale upon hearing that secret but quickly regained her composure, saying that she had come to bring ginseng soup to the Queen Consort. After all, she had once been a court lady by her side, so the Queen Consort had no suspicions and drank the entire bowl of soup she offered. Ti So-yang took a deep breath and then asked her about the selection of the new Crown Prince. The Queen Consort immediately became stern, telling her not to get involved in this matter because it was a deadly war without bloodshed. Once she got involved, even she wouldn't be able to protect her. Every concubine in the imperial harem was under suspicion, yet they still had the composure to eat dim sum, drink afternoon tea, and discuss the culprit who murdered the Crown Prince. The true villain, Royal Noble Consort Hwang, remained silently unreadable. Royal Noble Consort Go said, "It could be someone we least expect." That statement hit Royal Noble Consort Hwang right where it hurt. Royal Noble Consort Hwang changed the subject to the system of selecting worthy heirs. As long as a prince is capable, whether he's of the main line or a secondary line, he will have the opportunity to compete for the throne. Ti So-young immediately put down her cup. It seems I've come to the wrong place, and I'll be leaving now. The other concubines sneered. Even if they are choosing worthy heirs, it's not as if it would ever be her turn. Upon returning to her palace, her close friend analyzed the situation for her. Grand General, the maternal grandfather of Grand Prince Yuisong, wields immense power. Royal noble consort Go's uncle is the second state counselor, so her son, Simon, also has a significant opportunity. Only your Bogum has absolutely no chance. He can't compare to them. Moreover, there are 4 sons of the queen consort, all of whom rank higher than Bogum Ti So-young. Seeing the situation, recalled the queen consort's words, "Don't get involved in this power struggle." She also knew that her son was unlikely to win. But then, an incident occurred. For at the school, Yuisong declared that he would definitely win the position of crown prince. Bogum retorted, telling him not to be arrogant. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. That statement infuriated Yuisong, who drew his sword to strike Bogum. Bogum was knocked to the ground. Just as Yuisong swung his sword to strike, Seongnam appeared and saved Bogum from him. Bogum suppressed his resentment and returned home with his mother. Ti So-young repeatedly asked him if he wanted to become crown prince. He told his mother not to entertain such delusions. With their family background, how could he ever become crown prince? She had endured countless humiliations because of her lowly status, but she didn't want to see her son also suffer such indignities. So, she decided to disregard the queen consort's advice and fight for the position of crown prince. Therefore, she arranged to meet with the Minister of Military Affairs, proposing a collaboration to elevate Bogum to the position of crown prince. But he was not easily swayed. Naturally, there had to be an exchange of benefits. Ti So-young said she knew a secret about the queen consort. The queen consort used medicine from outside the palace for the crown prince. This major secret would be very effective in overthrowing the queen consort. So, the Minister of Military Affairs told this secret to the Grand General. Seeing the opportunity, the Grand General went to the Royal Medical Institute that very night, interrogating the court physicians and asking, during the previous treatment of the crown prince, did anyone act suspiciously? The court physicians looked at each other. One of them stepped forward and said that he hadn't noticed anything unusual. As a result, the Grand General directly had him killed on the spot. He had killed one person as a warning, intimidating the others into obedience. The next day, the queen consort learned that His Highness intended to hold a trial for the imperial physician, ordering the Empress Dowager and the queen consort to attend the proceedings. The chief general argued that during the crown prince's treatment, the imperial physician had not used medicinal ingredients from the Imperial Medical Institute. A physician from the institute testified that they had seen the imperial physician taking out a small yellow pouch when brewing medicine. Upon analyzing the dregs, they discovered an ingredient not found within the palace. The chief general then questioned the head of the Imperial Medical Institute. If the crown prince used medicinal ingredients from outside the palace, could that be the main cause of his death? The head physician replied, medicines within the palace undergo rigorous testing. If ingredients from outside are used, their efficacy and safety cannot be guaranteed. If someone intentionally tampered with the ingredients, it could very well have exacerbated the crown prince's condition, leading to his death. At this point, the chief general declared, the crown prince's death is undoubtedly due to these medicinal ingredients from outside the palace. If we investigate the origin of these ingredients, we are sure to find the culprit. His Highness ordered the imperial physician to reveal the source of the medicine. Just as the imperial physician was about to speak, the queen consort suddenly interjected, asking the chief general, what evidence do you have to prove that the crown prince's death is related to medicine from outside the palace? The chief general ignored her question and instead asked the imperial physician, how dare you presumptuously use medicine from outside the palace? The queen consort turned to His Highness. Before the crown prince passed away, the chief general was already planning to depose him. After his death, he spread rumors that I poisoned my own son, and now he claims medicine from outside the palace was the cause. This is all aimed at me, clearly an attempt to frame the queen consort. At this moment, the Empress Dowager spoke up. The crown prince's sudden demise. This isn't the first time, is it? The queen consort is trying to cover for the person who brought medicine from outside. so she brought up the attempt to poison the chief general. What? Is the chief supervisor making false accusations against the mother of the nation? His Highness interjected, ordering them to stop arguing. The trial would continue the next day. After His Highness departed, the Empress Dowager rose and walked to the Queen Consort's side, reprimanding her for daring to bring up the previous Crown Prince's death. The Queen Consort said that after experiencing the pain of losing a child, she was no longer afraid of anything. The Empress Dowager reminded her not to forget that she still had 4 sons. The Queen Consort warned her, "Don't touch my 4 sons, or you'd better be ready before you go to meet the previous Queen Consort. My biggest mistake was not being able to prevent you from ascending to the position of Queen Consort. I simply despise whoever sits in the Queen Consort's place." The Crown Princess ran out of the palace, carrying her child, and happened to encounter the Queen Consort on her way. She begged her to save Crown Prince Nguyen Tun because she suspected the palace maids were poisoning him, causing him to vomit and have diarrhea. The Queen Consort immediately brought the Crown Princess and her child into the central palace and began investigating the matter. To reassure the Crown Princess that the food was not poisoned, the Queen Consort tasted the food first, and then fed it to Nguyen Tun. She noticed a drawing by Nguyen Tun depicting herself and a strange woman. She asked, "Who is that?" Nguyen Tun said that they were the senior court ladies, and they were playing a secret game. Upon closer inspection of the drawing, the Queen Consort realized that the woman in the picture was stabbing something into Nguyen Tun's thigh. Sensing something was wrong, the Queen Consort immediately lifted Nguyen Tun's pants and discovered numerous needle marks on his thigh. Turning back to the food on the table, the silver spoon had turned black. She immediately forced Nguyen Tun to regurgitate the meat in his stomach. At once, the Queen Consort questioned the senior court ladies about harming Nguyen Tun. The maids trembled in fear, recounting that their families had been taken hostage, begging the Queen Consort to kill them instead. The Queen Consort promised to save their families if they revealed who had given them the orders. The last of the conspirators committed suicide, believing that whoever gave the orders was even more formidable than the Queen. The Queen and others immediately searched for poison, but someone had already started a fire. The flames erupted in the bedchamber. Realizing something was wrong, the Queen immediately told the head court lady, "No one is to enter the Queen's quarters without notifying her first. We can't trust anyone anymore. Keep a close watch on the Dowager Queen's every move." The imperial concubine T panicked and wanted to leave the palace, even threatening suicide, claiming she had no reason to live after losing the crown prince. The Queen objected and suggested she stay to protect One Xian. The Dowager Queen threatened His Highness, reminding him that she was the one who put him on the throne. She demanded that he agree to hold a selection competition for a new crown prince, or she would personally depose the Queen. Worried about the Queen, her children visited their mother. They brought her some food. They knew she had a difficult day and reminded her to take care of herself. This act was genuinely heartwarming, and the Queen felt incredibly happy. Seongnam heard that the Queen was to be tried the next day for bringing medicine from outside the palace. Not wanting his mother to be further implicated, he went to see His Highness and told him that the Queen was not the one who brought the medicine into the palace. He was the one who obtained it from a doctor outside. He decided he would prove that it wasn't the cause of the Crown Prince's death. His Highness allowed Seongnam to find witnesses and confirm as much as possible. Meanwhile, the Queen's investigation into the poisoning of One Xian wasn't progressing well. No evidence of poison could be found anywhere. The Dowager Queen couldn't find out what the Queen was doing, but she didn't need to bother. She summoned the head court lady, slapped her, and demanded answers. The head court lady was finally released, overhearing the Dowager Queen saying that she would not interrogate the Queen because her own misdeeds would be easily exposed. The Dowager Queen clearly held an ace up her sleeve against the Queen's side, but couldn't play it yet. Seongnam immediately went to find a witness who could confirm that the medicine he provided was effective. Unfortunately, he couldn't find the doctor. He had left. He went to the place where he bought the medicine and searched for clues everywhere. But he didn't know that the doctor was avoiding him. The Dowager Queen wasn't the only one who wanted to deal with the Queen. Commander-in-Chief and the royal concubine also had a new plan. He guessed that the Queen would certainly want to see the royal physician now, as this was her only recourse. Sure enough, at night, the Queen went to the prison. when she took off her cloak to order the prison guards to open the gate as the queen, the commander-in-chief, walked out. He laughed and asked, "Does the queen want to collude with the royal physician to cover up the truth?" The queen said she came to make sure the royal physician wasn't being coerced and to check if he was still conscious. The commander-in-chief suddenly burst out laughing. "Could it be that your majesty is afraid he'll reveal the truth? Preposterous! Get out of my way. These are his highness's orders. Today, only his highness can cross this gate." The queen glared at the commander-in-chief and finally turned and left. The commander-in-chief watched the queen's retreating figure, thinking he had won this round. At this time, in the prison, the royal concubine slowly approached the royal physician. She grabbed his hand, touched his face, and told him he must persevere. Everything was about to end. The royal physician also placed his hand on the royal concubine's ear, perhaps a silent agreement. The next morning brought the public trial. The royal physician finally yielded and revealed that it was the queen consort who had brought the medicinal herbs from outside the palace. The queen consort remained silent, then admitted that she had given the medicine to the physician. "However, I do not believe that the medicine caused the crown prince's death." She insisted that they could prove the medicine wasn't the cause and that someone had framed her. She then stated that the herbs had been given to her by the crown princess. Everyone was stunned. His Majesty ordered a search of the crown princess's chambers. Unfortunately, they found the medicine there as well. The crown princess pointed out that she had been brewing medicine for the crown prince's chronic cough, but insisted that all the herbs had been sourced within the palace, not from outside. However, there was no record of this, putting her in a difficult situation. Consequently, the crown princess was implicated as the one who killed the crown prince. The queen consort had successfully saved herself, but at the cost of sacrificing the crown princess and the grandson. This time in the Grand Hall, the high-ranking officials pleaded for the crown princess to be punished. The chief general believed this was an excellent opportunity to eliminate both the queen consort and the grandson. Naturally, he had even more reason to decide to depose the queen consort. He even went so far as to propose the death penalty for both the crown princess and the grandson. His Majesty was furious about this, as he knew that Seongnam was the one who brought the medicine in, but he was in a predicament. The queen consort had admitted to bringing the medicine into the palace, and the crown princess had admitted to possessing it. Even though this medicine was for herself and not intended for the crown prince, nothing could change the outcome. That night, the queen consort surprised the dowager queen. She went to see her and brought up the events of years past, making sure to emphasize that the queen consort knew who had killed the crown prince back then. Despite receiving a slap from the dowager queen, the queen consort stated her purpose. "The dowager queen must suppress the high-ranking officials, or I will reveal everything." She also made sure to summon the chief general to her side. Afterward, the queen consort suggested that they stop deliberately harming the crown princess and the grandson. She wanted the crown princess and the grandson to be expelled from the palace. The queen consort also said, "If none of my children can become crown prince, I will relinquish my position as queen consort." The crown princess and the grandson bid farewell to everyone. The queen consort kept a close watch on their every action. Unfortunately, a plan to kill the crown princess and the grandson was set in motion as soon as they left the palace gates. The crown princess and her child were demoted to commoners. Before they left, Seongnam came, untying the ropes binding his nephew. The small wrists showed red marks from the tightening. He promised the boy that he would definitely bring them back to the palace. The carriage escorting them moved down the road, suddenly dropped its curtains, and stopped in front of a deserted house. The surveillance team sent by the chief general was soon there, but when they opened the carriage, it was empty. The chief general was shocked to learn that they had escaped safely without being ambushed on the road. Elsewhere, the queen consort had arranged a safe haven for the crown princess and her child. Previously, the queen consort had warned the crown princess about all of this. She agreed to do everything and endure it for her children. By placing all the blame on the crown princess, she could both cause the grandson to lose his status as crown prince and get the crown princess and her grandson out of the palace. In that way, the two of them would no longer be a threat to the dowager queen and the chief general, thus preserving their lives. The queen consort said, "Now you can have fun outside, without worrying that someone will come to harm you." Upon returning to the palace, Seongnam, unaware of the situation, went to see his mother and asked why she had shifted the blame for bringing outside medicine onto the crown princess. The queen consort explained everything to Seongnam and expressed her hope that he could replace his brother as the next crown prince. Seongnam was shocked, but desiring to turn the tables, he agreed to his mother's proposal. A great battle was about to begin. The queen consort spoke to His Majesty about the policy of selecting a crown prince based on talent, reminding him of their first encounter years ago. She recounted that it was because of this policy of meritocracy that she was chosen as crown princess, being more confident and talented than others. She knew that His Majesty would certainly become a wise and enlightened king. However, His Majesty pointed out that, according to this policy, the position of crown prince might not belong to the queen consort's children. She immediately replied that she trusted her children and that the decision should be based on their abilities. The following day, His Majesty announced a competition for the position of crown prince. This time, he would serve as the primary judge. The preliminary rounds would be conducted based on a new form of competition. The concubines in the harem, upon hearing the news, were surprised to learn that Grand Prince Bogum went directly to see the Dowager Queen. He returned the secret manual for raising a crown prince and stated that he didn't believe in it, adding that His Majesty had won the throne not because of this manual, but because he had a mother like the Dowager Queen. Upon hearing this, she beamed, pleading with the Dowager Queen to help her grandson. Meanwhile, the competition for the position of crown prince had begun. All the princes were blindfolded and taken to a wilderness area, where they were instructed to return to the finish line within a set time. The one who could bring the nameplate back to the finish line first would be the new owner of the Eastern Palace. Everyone wanted to rush back as quickly as possible. It couldn't be denied. His Majesty certainly had a lot of children. The chubby boy at the end probably gave up from the start. The princes, in order to compete for the position of crown prince, also had to participate in the competition. The first test was archery. They had to hit a target 100 meters away within 5 minutes. But fate intervened, and a sudden gust of wind arose, causing everyone's arrows to fall to the ground. At this moment, Seongnam closed his eyes, remembering how his older brother had taught him how to shoot an arrow in the wind. Don't fight the wind, but use it. So, he aimed his arrow into the air and released the first shot. Sure enough, the arrow followed the wind and hit the target. For the next round, His Majesty wanted them to find someone who had been an old friend of his, but who did not want to work in the court and had disappeared. He wanted the future crown prince to have a wise mentor to assist him. Whoever could persuade this recluse would definitely be a candidate for the position of crown prince. They changed into ordinary clothes and then had to ride horses to find the person. The first to leave was Grand Prince Bogum. His sharp eyes helped him find an excellent breed of horse. After selecting one, he immediately rode off. The second was Uisong, the most cunning of the princes, who selected a horse and then put medicine in its food. Seongnam arrived last, only to find that there were no more horses left to ride. The servant said that he didn't know why all the horses had collapsed. At this point, Seongnam saw a horse that had not yet been tamed. He said he wanted to ride it, but the servant was worried that the horse was too fierce and he wouldn't be able to tame it. But Seongnam was very confident. Sure enough, a second later, he rode off. The concubines in the palace were not idle either. Royal noble consort disguised herself and gave documents to a man in black on the road, telling him to deliver them to Uisong in the palace. The Dowager Queen found information about the Northern Yu and gave it to Bogum's mother, T. So-young. She was excited and thanked her repeatedly. Bogum is capable, but lacks family support. I have personally found him a backing. The two of us will definitely try our best and not let down the Dowager Queen's trust. The Dowager Queen reminded her to go and deliver the documents. The noble consort also sought out her son, not only providing him with documents but also assigning people to meticulously guide him. The most carefree were Fatty and the fifth prince from Queen Consort Young's household. The two rode donkeys, ate snacks, and paid no attention to the crown prince position. Along the way, they were still discussing local delicacies. At this moment, Queen Consort Young, who should have been the most worried, was calmly embroidering alone. A court lady asked, "Aren't you worried?" Queen Consort Young said she trusted Seongnam's abilities. because the two of them had a discussion yesterday. The Crown Prince personally imparted knowledge and martial arts to him. The Crown Prince has always educated and trained him according to Crown Prince standards, so I'm very confident he will win. Therefore, I will also do my best to prevent those who want to violate the rules. Queen Consort Young decided to summon all the concubines in the palace to embroider flowers, precisely to deny them the opportunity to break the competition's rules. The most anxious person at this time was Bogum's mother, because the intelligence she was trying to gather had not been delivered due to the court ladies blocking her. She was frantic, like an ant on a hot skillet, pretending to need to use the restroom in order to go outside. But the head court lady arranged by Queen Consort Young was standing guard outside. She could only return to her seat. Another concubine told her, "Only by quickly finishing the embroidery will you have a chance to go out." Only Royal Noble Consort had no intention of starting to embroider. She just leisurely sat there drinking tea. On the other side, the princes were already on their way. At this moment, a group of archers ambushed them. Not targeting Bogum, their target was Seongnam, who was following behind. Unexpectedly, although an arrow grazed Seongnam's face, he managed to dodge behind a tree in time, thus avoiding a fatal blow. Simultaneously, another group suddenly appeared behind him, attacking the assassins who were attacking Seongnam. After the two sides joined forces, they quickly eliminated the assassins. Seongnam didn't know who was behind it all. He could only thank the team that helped him and hastily continue on his way. It turned out that the group that had just helped Seongnam was the embroidered uniform guard dispatched by His Majesty, with the purpose of protecting the safety of all the princes in the competition. The commander of the embroidered uniform guard gave the red arrow used by the assassins to His Majesty, also saying that these arrows belonged to a group of bandits whose leader had been shot dead on the spot, but the deputy leader had escaped. When Queen Consort Young learned this, she thought that this was not an ordinary bandit gang. Therefore, she went to His Majesty's palace, hoping that he would immediately investigate the assassination attempt on Seongnam. But His Majesty said he couldn't investigate yet. "Wait until everything is calm, then I will naturally investigate. Wait until the competition is over. There will be no witnesses, and other evidence will also disappear. Your Majesty, a forced investigation will anger the ministers. They will think that I want to influence the competition. This is a sensitive time, offending the ministers like that." Queen Consort Young knew that she could only rely on herself in this matter, so she approached, picked up the red arrow, and said, "Now I will investigate with the status of a mother, and I will not interfere with the competition." Then she turned and left. The queen went to the morgue to examine the bandit's corpse and discovered his throat was severely swollen, so she ordered them to pry his mouth open. Sure enough, there was a piece of paper inside. She immediately took the paper and slowly unfolded it. It was a portrait of Seongnam, with the words, "Must kill," written in red ink. Clearly, they were trying to take her son's life. As a mother, how could the queen tolerate this? She immediately returned to her main palace, raised a red feathered arrow, and asked all the concubines if anyone recognized it. The concubines looked at each other blankly, but the royal noble consort's face changed slightly, as if she knew something. Then, the queen announced that someone had attempted to assassinate Seongnam, but fortunately the assassin had been caught, and all the remaining accomplices were being interrogated. At this, the royal noble consort became even more tense. In reality, the queen was deliberately lying. The bandits were still alive, to see who among them truly wanted her son dead. And tonight, whoever was eager to leave the palace was certainly connected to the assassin. So, she had people follow them. The girl saw her enter a secluded house, whose owner was none other than General Commander. When he heard the news of the assassination attempt on Seongnam, he was extremely surprised because he had explicitly ordered them only to disrupt his progress, not to kill Seongnam. Now, he had to bear the guilt for the real culprit. He instructed his subordinates to find the escaped vice commander and find out who had ordered them to harm Seongnam. When the queen learned that the general commander was looking for the vice commander, she knew he wasn't the real mastermind behind the incident. She raised an eyebrow and ordered her subordinates. Following the general commander's people won't take much effort to find the vice commander. Sure enough, the general commander's people were reliable. The next day, they found the vice commander and were chasing him through the market. When the vice commander hid behind a house, thinking he had successfully escaped, He turned around and found a sword pointing at him. It turned out the queen had led people to capture him. Afterward, she interrogated him on sharp bamboo spikes. The queen took out the portrait of Seongnam with blood on it and asked him, "Who gave you this drawing?" The vice commander claimed he only followed the commander's orders and knew nothing else. Seeing that he was being uncooperative, the queen ordered him a lesson. Her subordinates lifted him high, then dropped him. Someone came to find the vice commander, saying that a woman had come that day, gave the commander 4 gold ingots, and handed over the drawing with instructions to kill Seongnam. Although he couldn't clearly see the woman's face, he did see that she was wearing a jade frog hairpin. At this moment, the queen was stunned, her eyes widening, because she knew that the only person who wore a jade frog hairpin and smelled of peonies was the Dowager Queen's close maid. This was the first time the queen knelt before the Dowager Queen, bowing her head in apology and asking for forgiveness, and presenting the Dowager Queen with a gift. The Dowager Queen poured tea, not believing the queen had changed her ways. She suspected the queen was plotting something. Sure enough, as soon as the gift box was opened, the Dowager Queen's face turned pale with anger. The queen immediately shifted from a pitiful demeanor to a domineering presence. Inside the gift box was a poisonous drug. She said to the Dowager Queen, "If you still want to harm my son, I will personally force feed you this. How dare you threaten your mother-in-law? You sent a palace maid who smelled of peonies to order others to kill Seongnam." The queen warned the Dowager Queen not to act rashly because she had the bandits as witnesses. If the Dowager Queen did anything else against her conscience, she would expose everything. Seeing that the Dowager Queen's expression showed no sign of remorse, and that Seongnam's competition was extremely difficult, it was clear that Bogum had just crossed the river by boat. But when it was Seongnam's turn, they announced there would be no rowing today. It was obvious that people of General Commander were secretly interfering. Seongnam had his men turn around, then immediately jumped over the fence. He rode his horse at full speed on the path between the rivers. This scene is truly beautiful. Let's enjoy this little bit together. Can I take my brother's place? If so, I'm compelled to become the crown prince. And Bogum has found Master Park. He even read the royal decree, appointing him Deputy Minister of Personnel, hoping he would return to the palace with him to take up the post. But Master Park didn't even pay attention to this second-rank official position and immediately got up to leave. Bogum didn't give up either, following him right away. Just then, Seongnam arrived on the scene. Master Park said that his eyes had been blind for a long time and he couldn't take on the official position. Seongnam didn't give up, saying he could prove he wasn't blind, but he had to promise him 3 days. Master Park said, and if you can't prove it, Seongnam guaranteed that he and Bogum would leave together. Bogum was stunned. You're pulling strings behind my back and dragging me into this. Then, Seongnam drew his sword and pointed it directly at Master Park's eyes. But he didn't flinch. Afterward, Seongnam pretended to admit defeat, saying he would leave now, but he immediately jumped off the cliff, making them rush over to check on him. What the heck are you doing? Has hearing a lunatic made you open your eyes yet? First of all, aren't you going to rescue me? Unexpectedly, Bogum immediately left. What a pair of ungrateful brothers. That evening, Seongnam finally climbed up from the cliff. He immediately barged into Bogum's room and asked him why he didn't save him. Bogum said that after considering it, he realized it was more advantageous not to save Seongnam. Seongnam sarcastically said Bogum was someone who always calculates the costs. If I hadn't jumped off the cliff to prove Master Park wasn't blind, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to stay for 3 days. Bogum didn't want to argue and blew out the lamp to go to sleep. Seongnam then opened the door, saying he needed to read before he could sleep. One person complained about being cold, and the other was hot. What a pair of ungrateful brothers. The next morning, Seongnam went to the coast to learn about the lives of the people. Unexpectedly, the girl who had been searching for him for days appeared there. Because Seongnam didn't show up for their meeting at the pharmacy, she had been carrying a portrait of him, searching everywhere. She even grabbed hold of a man who looked very similar, stubbornly asking if he often saw Seongnam. Then Bai Rain said he's never seen you. Never seen such a handsome man? If you've never seen him, then just keep going your way. This girl is crazy at such a young age. The girl had also run into the Tam-D gun on the road, and they accidentally embraced. The Tam Gun saw the portrait in her hand and recognized it as his second brother. That's why she came to this island to wait for Seongnam. Just then, an old woman saw Seongnam and told the girl to see if it was the man in the painting. The girl looked up and, sure enough, it was the man she had been longing for. She happily ran to Seongnam and embraced him tightly. Such courage in pursuing love is something every girl should learn from. She rested her head against Seongnam's chest, feeling his heartbeat. "Why didn't you come that day? I waited for you for so long." Seongnam pushed her away. "Who are you?" The girl wasn't angry that Seongnam had forgotten her, and she told him that she was the girl he met at the pharmacy. Only then did Seongnam remember. "I really missed you." Looking at this girl's radiant smile, Seongnam's heart felt warmed by the sun, and the flame of love burst into life. After the queen consort left, the dowager queen stared coldly at the poisonous plant in front of her, determined that none of the queen consort's children would ever ascend the throne. Leaving the dowager queen's palace, the queen consort went directly to the crown prince, informing him of the results of the investigation into the attack on Seongnam. The culprits were the chief state counselor and the dowager queen. The crown prince was convinced by the queen consort's evidence. She said that if a similar incident happened again, she wouldn't stand idly by, but would certainly punish them. The crown prince immediately went to see the dowager queen. The dowager queen cunningly feigned being poisoned. The head court lady said that the dowager queen had taken medicine brought by the queen consort and was immediately poisoned. "I truly dislike Seongnam, your highness. Don't you know how he was born? Why would you think I want to kill my own grandson?" Then the dowager queen fainted. Unbelievably, the old dowager queen was such a good actress. As the crown prince exited the dowager queen's chambers, he ran into the queen consort. The crown prince asked if the queen consort had really given the dowager queen medicine. The queen consort explained that she only wanted to warn the dowager queen. Unexpectedly, the crown prince said, "That's not a warning, it's just finding an excuse to escape punishment." The queen consort hadn't anticipated that the old dowager queen would use this feigned illness. After entering the room, she directly said, "Dowager queen, stop faking it." Sure enough, the dowager queen opened her eyes wide and sat up, not at all like someone who had been poisoned. The dowager queen even cheerfully said, "You all must have been frightened, right?" The queen consort, not willing to be outdone, said, "We were almost measuring you for your burial shroud." The smile on the dowager queen's face immediately stiffened. "The position of heir apparent is decided by me." It seemed the dowager queen still had other plans for dealing with Seongnam. Indeed, she wouldn't give up until she achieved her goal. After the queen consort left the dowager queen's chambers, she overheard the portly court lady saying that the dowager queen had been frequently seeing royal consort T, the mother of Grand Prince Bogum. Could it be that she wanted to help Bogum become the heir apparent? The queen consort suspected something was amiss and wondered if the dowager queen was supporting or manipulating Prince Bogum to help Prince Uaisong, or was she playing both sides? To try and understand what she was doing, the queen consort summoned royal consort T to find out the truth, and directly asked T So-young, "Do you really think Grand Prince Bogum has the capability to become the heir apparent?" Unexpectedly, the simple-minded T So-young said that even if Bogum became the heir apparent, she would definitely protect the queen consort's position and wouldn't compete for it. Hearing this, the queen consort knew that T So-young was no match for her, and then mentioned the dowager queen's sudden illness today. "If you go to visit the dowager queen, she'll definitely be very touched." T So-young hurriedly thanked her and left. But this was just the first step for the queen consort to sow discord. The second step was for the queen consort to find the chief state counselor, directly bringing the bandit vice commander that they had captured before him. He immediately recognized the chief state counselor's henchman. It was he who had ordered them to assassinate Seongnam. The chief state counselor's eyes widened. Then he forced a laugh, saying he would absolutely never do something like assassinate a prince. Unexpectedly, the queen consort said, "I believe you wouldn't do that, because I know the one who ordered Seongnam's death was someone else. You were framed by that person. That person is the dowager queen." The chief state counselor's face turned ashen upon hearing this. Before leaving, the queen consort reminded the chief state counselor to be careful, because recently the dowager queen and Prince Bogum's mother were very close. and it was highly likely that they had abandoned him. Otherwise, why would they pin the blame on you? My final words to you, maybe we'll work together in the future, Chief State Counselor. Of course, he couldn't swallow this insult, so he led Royal Concubine to find the Dowager Queen. But the head court lady told them Ti So-young was already inside. The Chief State Counselor was about to leave, but Royal Concubine said, "Let's just keep waiting." Inside the room, Ti So-young personally cooked porridge and brought it to the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager smiled, praising Ti So-young for raising her children well, for being exceedingly filial and perfectly suited to be a queen mother. Hearing this, Ti So-young was both surprised and delighted. Unexpectedly, the Queen Dowager even took out a ring and gifted it to Ti So-young. Overjoyed at receiving the ring, Ti So-young immediately put it on and repeatedly expressed her gratitude, saying she would wholeheartedly dedicate herself to serving the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager, knowing the opportune moment had arrived, beckoned Ti So-young to lean in close, saying she had a great secret to reveal. Ti So-young immediately covered her mouth with her hand. What could this secret possibly be? Upon exiting the room, Ti So-young encountered Chief State Counselor and Royal Concubine waiting. Royal Concubine sneered, "Ti So-young's appearance is just like when she was still a court lady." Ti So-young, not willing to endure the humiliation, deliberately showed off the ring the Queen Dowager had given her. The Royal Concubine's complexion instantly turned pale. After entering the room, Royal Concubine proactively said she wanted to drink royal tea within the Queen Dowager's chambers. "There's no guarantee I'll get to drink it again later." The Queen Dowager touched the teapot, saying, "The water is cold now, and the tea wouldn't taste good if brewed." Demonstrating over and over that matters regarding Yuisong weren't hopeless, was she? Royal Concubine, unable to bear it any longer, asked the Queen Dowager, "How are the recommendations for the Crown Prince position being considered?" The cunning old fox Queen Dowager said, "The current situation is still hard to say, but the only thing that can be certain is that we won't let the Crown Princess's son become the Crown Prince." Chief State Counselor also couldn't endure it, so he said, "Why has the Queen Dowager been frequently meeting with Ti So-young lately? Is it to help Grand Prince Bogum?" The Queen Dowager then chuckled, saying that she wouldn't reject any prince with the ability to become the Crown Prince. At this point, Chief State Counselor became angry. "If you're old and still endlessly greedy, you'll only make people despise you. Knowing how to use a man's mindset to pursue a man is truly skillful. The first secret to pursuing a man is to frequently, unintentionally appear before him." Is she following me? It just so happens that I wanted to stroll through the market street. They investigated and surveyed the market together, then discovered that the clam vendors were constantly being lowballed. Master Park, seeing this, waited there, saying that they must sell at the last minute, and then went to eat a meal. But after finishing his meal, on the way back, the aide reported that the clams had been sold for 3 times the price. Bogum couldn't believe that the price had suddenly tripled. Master Park proudly said, using this as a riddle for the two of them to explain the reason. Grand Prince Bogum said, "Today, we had to wait until the last minute because we suspected the price might rebound. Such a method is truly too risky. If it didn't rebound, we would have lost money." But Seongnam had a different perspective. There were very few good clams in the market today, and the clams from the island are of the highest quality. People who want to buy good clams will naturally agree to pay a high price, and then the price will gradually rise again. Master Park nodded in satisfaction. Just as they were about to leave, Seongnam seemed to be looking for something. Zhang Hua reappeared before him. "Are you looking for me?" "I'm not looking for you, I'm looking for the abacus." "You really are a stubborn guy." Was Zhang Hua not going to follow this time? Seongnam stood on the pier, looking at the pile of money that Teacher Park had earned, and began to doubt his motives for selling clams wholesale to the people. Would this huge profit be shared with the fishermen, or did he intend to keep it for himself? Bogam immediately reminded him that they had come to bring him back, not to investigate him. At that moment, the captain announced that it was time for the ship to depart. Seongnam realized that Zhang Hua was nowhere to be seen, his heart burning with anxiety. He told the captain that there was still one person who hadn't boarded. Looking all around, he finally saw Zhang Hua approaching from the other side of the pier. Seongnam rushed towards her. "Why aren't you waiting for people? And why are you holding people's hands? I've never seen anyone as stubborn as you. If it weren't for the royal inspector, the young lady might have missed the boat. So you really were waiting for me? I wasn't. Zhonghua took out the abacus she had just bought, explaining that when she arrived on the island, she was in a hurry and didn't have any money on her. She could only sell the hairpin she had just bought to get the abacus, which is why she was late boarding the ship. Thank you, Xiangnam said. I'm the one who should be thankful. Xiangnam unconsciously smirked, but when he saw Bogam's gaze, he suppressed his laughter. When they returned to the island, Xiangnam gave the abacus to a little girl. The girl was overjoyed. Her dream is to one day go to a calculation school. That sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? People say things offhandedly sometimes. Don't give up on that dream. Dreams never run away. The thing that runs away is always ourselves. Zhonghua couldn't help but smile brightly at that. How could one not fall in love with a man like that? Meanwhile, the princes continued to carry out their missions. Hodong and the Trungdin's youngest son had returned. He was completely indifferent to the whole affair, satisfied with his journey. Simon, having lost the contest, had gone to extremes. In the panicked state of the palace, they quickly called for people to rescue him. He was clutching a jade pendant tightly in his hand. After being treated by the royal physician, Simon's life was saved. Trungdin breathed a sigh of relief as well. She ordered everyone not to reveal this matter to the outside world. Simon was simply ill due to the strenuous competition. At that moment, Simon's mother was anxiously waiting outside. She never imagined that just one word from her had caused her son to abandon his life. You're so useless, you'd be better off dead. It turned out that Simon had finally made it back to the palace gates with great difficulty. But because he didn't have a pass, he was stopped by the guards. To prove his identity, he accurately listed the layout and positions of the plants and trees in the palace. The guard went in to report. But when concubine Cao saw him in this state, she not only did not show him compassion, but told him to quickly return to the competition. But Simon said that he was hungry, and his purse didn't have a single coin left. He wanted to give up the competition and return to the palace. But concubine Cao didn't agree. After saying that, she slipped him a jade pendant, telling him not to let others find out. Take the jade pendant and go back to the competition. Just like that, Simon collapsed by the roadside like a beggar. He didn't have the strength to get up. It wasn't until late at night that a palace maid discovered him. So, he was taken to the queen consort's palace. Simon couldn't stop eating. The people in the palace told him he didn't need to rush and asked why he was clutching the jade pendant so tightly. This jade pendant was the first gift my mother gave me. At that moment, royal concubine Cao suddenly burst in, knocking over his dining table in one fell swoop. The palace staff stepped forward to stop her. The royal concubine says she'll personally discipline her son. Please don't interfere. The queen consort said that she also had a responsibility to educate the princes in the palace. But royal concubine Cao sneered. The queen consort is a hypocrite. If the child who returned were your child, you certainly wouldn't be able to smile at someone else's pain like this. The queen consort said she would never send a child away once he had decided to return to the palace. You have disgraced your mother and the entire family. Rather than have your mother see this useless form of yours, it would be better to die. Poor Simon could only cower in fear in the corner. After royal concubine Cao returned to her palace, she not only didn't regret her actions, but she also hatched a plot to harm the queen consort. She secretly sneaked into 4th Prince Hai's chambers, rummaging around. Witnessing Hai's fondness for women's clothing, she indeed found a painting of Hai and dragged deep inside the closet. She immediately burst into wild laughter. The next day, she brought the painting to the imperial noble consort's palace. The imperial noble consort was startled as soon as she opened it. Royal concubine Cao said that Hai was secretly dressing as a woman in the palace, and this act was tarnishing the honor of the royal family. The queen consort knows about this, but is hiding it. Even the Dowager Empress knows but doesn't want to speak out. If you can use this to overthrow both the Dowager Empress and the queen consort, then the crown prince's position will certainly belong to Ui. Afterward, she took back the painting, telling the imperial noble consort that she only had one condition. I absolutely must see the queen consort in utter despair. On the other side, the queen consort invited Simon to drink tea, telling him that this type of brew was called jiming. Pouring the tea into the cup to exactly 7/10 full is the right amount to drink. If it's more than 7/10, the tea will spill, just like the principles of life. No one is perfect, like a teacup with a flaw. So, we should just try to do the things we can do, and not force ourselves to become perfect. Simon seemed enlightened by what he heard. But the queen consort also saw that he was still haunted by royal concubine Cow's words, so she told him that royal concubine Cow had always seen him as her pride. In the past, you were the first prince to memorize written characters. At that time, royal concubine Cow was extremely happy and proud. On the other side, royal concubine Cow had taken out Simon's outfits from when he was little. In reality, she had always kept them carefully stored in a box. No mother doesn't love her child. The next day, Simon went to the arena, took down his nameplate, and indicated that he was withdrawing from the competition. His mother no longer blamed him. The two stood facing each other, and a single glance was enough for them to understand each other's intentions. Early in the morning, the queen consort went straight to the high circumflex guard post and opened the door to indeed see a couple lying on the ground. She went in wanting to pull the blanket off, only to see a familiar face, and the queen consort's blood pressure soared. Moo fearfully entered the room. You are a prince, but you abandoned the competition to sleep with a woman. But love isn't a crime. You dare to talk back. You are disqualified. Immediately return to the East Palace and personally take down your nameplate. Moo said he originally had no interest in the crown prince position. The queen consort was speechless. She told the palace maids to take Moo out, or she would go mad. But Moo hid behind the palace maid, begging that he wanted to take Cho-yu as a concubine. After Moo ran away, the queen consort took a deep breath, deciding she had to meet the woman who had been intimate with Moo, Cho-yu. In the palace, she told Cho-yu that Moo was not like other noble young men. He says he genuinely loves you, but can only take you as a concubine. Even though Moo is my son, I don't think he's someone worthy of you entrusting your whole life to. But Cho-yu said she didn't want to entrust her whole life to him. Just being his soulmate was enough for her. Seeing Cho-yu so devoted, the queen consort couldn't convince her otherwise, so she stood up and left. This humble one feels that Her Majesty is no ordinary person. Whether it's a woman or someone of low status, their lives shouldn't be any different. Is that why you established the two pavilions? It turned out that the two pavilions was a place the queen consort built as a residence for women. Inside were women who had suffered a lot. She had once encountered a palace maid being bullied by a noble, pregnant, but being called a fraud by the noble. Not only did he not acknowledge the child in her womb, but he also ordered people to throw stones at her. The queen consort immediately stepped forward to stop it. She stood in front of the noble, rewarding him with a slap in the face. Ah, damn it, you dare touch me. Yes, I touched you. What are you all standing there for? Stop. Oh my god, Her Majesty the queen consort. Everyone who heard she was the queen consort knelt down. The noble also knelt on the ground, begging incessantly. The palace maid begged the queen consort not to interfere in the matter, because once the queen consort left, she would be punished even more severely. But the queen consort approached and helped her up, hugged her, and comforted her, telling her she didn't need to be afraid, and from now on she would live in the two pavilions. This was her new home. Now the queen consort came to the two pavilions again. It turned out that Cho-yu, whom Moo loved, was also a girl from the two pavilions. The queen consort praised her for having very strong opinions and said that she had been well educated here. The palace maids said the shelter the queen consort built for women was truly a blessing for the people. But the queen consort didn't know that a conspiracy by the royal consort likely, but not necessarily, the emperor's other woman, not the queen consort aimed at Hai had begun. She planned to kill Hai on the road, then report that he liked to wear women's clothes, and then make it look like Hai had committed suicide out of shame. Such a plan was too perfect. Meanwhile, Hai found the second person the crown prince mentioned in the competition, Seo Han-dek. However, he was now a monk at a remote temple. When Hai read the imperial decree appointing him as the grand commander, requesting him to return to the palace, Seo Han Dek only sent a letter saying that Hai had found the wrong person. However, Hai presented a map of a secret chamber in the palace that he had found in his Seo Han Dek's room yesterday, and also found military strategy books within the Buddhist scriptures. He demanded that he explain these things. Just then, he was arrested by soldiers and accused of killing a man named Cho Jim last night. In front of the road, witnesses recounted in detail, seeing Seo Han Dek threatening that man with his knife, then killing him and leaving the knife at the scene. Ui appeared to rescue Seo Han Dek. In fact, the person who killed Cho Jim last night was Ui. He did so to force Seo Han Dek to return to the palace with him so he could win the position of crown prince. Seo Han Dek had to choose between his life and his freedom. However, when Hai followed the map he'd obtained from Seo Han Dek's house, he discovered a hidden arsenal that Seo Han Dek had been hoarding. The royal physician and a senior doctor appeared outside Seo Han Dek's prison cell. Meanwhile, the queen consort also learned that the royal physician was connected to royal concubine H1. She was the one who recommended him for a position at the medical institute. Royal concubine H1 was also the one who suggested the royal physician to treat the crown prince. Sensing something amiss, the queen consort summoned royal concubine H1 to question her. But the royal concubine claimed she was merely a patient of his, and she only recommended him to the crown prince because she found him skilled. Then, she turned the question back on the queen consort, asking why she suddenly mentioned him. I plan to summon the royal physician back to the palace. Alarm bells immediately went off in royal concubine H1's head because just last night, she had received a letter from the royal physician informing her that everything was prepared. Your Majesty, what we have long awaited has finally come to fruition. Hai discovered Seo Han Dek's hidden weapon cache and a map of tunnels to infiltrate the palace for a rebellion. But he didn't expect that after telling Ui everything, Ui would tell his mother. Royal concubine H1 had her men knock Hai unconscious and seize the evidence of his treasonous acts. On the other hand, royal concubine H1 accused Hai to his majesty of cross-dressing, claiming that he dressed as a woman and wore makeup. She even said that royal concubine Cao gave her a portrait of Hai wearing women's clothing to show the emperor. Just then, the queen consort entered. She said she came to see royal concubine Cao to retrieve Hai's belongings. Royal concubine H1 quickly tried to prevent the queen consort from obtaining the painting and told royal concubine Cao to quickly give it to his majesty. However, when the painting was opened, it turned out to be just a painting of a cat. The emperor was furious, reprimanding royal concubine H1 for insulting a prince for the sake of the crown prince selection and stating he would not let this matter go. The queen consort stepped forward and requested to punish royal concubine H1 according to the rules of the inner court. It turned out that royal concubine Cao had previously confessed to the queen consort that she showed royal concubine H1 the painting of Hai. The queen consort quickly gave her a painting to exchange, escaping this ordeal. Royal concubine H1 questioned royal concubine Cao about where she had hidden the painting. But royal concubine Cao calmly said she didn't know what she was talking about and left. The plot to kill Hai and stage it as a suicide by hanging after being discovered was also foiled. An arrow saved Hai's life and brought him back to a safe hiding place. But when he woke up, Hai quickly announced that Seo Han Dek was planning a rebellion. The queen consort comforted her son. Rest assured, his majesty already knows about it. That's why he is waiting to capture him alive. Then, she also criticized Hai for knowing that Seo Han Dek was planning a rebellion but not bringing him in for punishment. The royal physician and the scarred-faced doctor escaped, but still felt afraid. Seo Han Dek has been captured, which means we will be discovered sooner or later. Once he can't withstand the interrogation and opens his mouth, we will be in danger. At the same time, Chief State Counselor was trying to exploit Seongnam's background to bring him down, hoping to make it easier for his nephew, Ui, to ascend to the throne. So, what secret lay behind Seongnam's parentage? Seongnam and Bogam discovered that Teacher Park was embezzling shellfish money from the people and immediately rushed back home to find evidence. Quickly, after rummaging around, the two found ledgers documenting the exchange of currency and goods, only to be caught red-handed by Teacher Park. He immediately kicked them out of the house. After thoroughly investigating the matter, Seongnam and Bogam went to Teacher Park and explained what he had done. It turned out he was taking double the commission from the people and using 3 parts of that commission. 1 part to pay off the debts of the relief warehouse, and the rest to establish a cooperative society to help people open shops and make a living during the shellfish shortage. Seeing that his actions had been correctly deduced by the 2 princes, Teacher Park still insisted he had no intention of working for the king. Bogam replied, "What about working not for the king, but for the common people?" Seongnam added that if Teacher Park entered the palace, he would help him put his theories into practice to help the people. Finally, Teacher Park agreed to go with the 2 princes back to the palace to take up a position. The queen consort personally went to retrieve Hai's name tablet. At this time, there were only 3 names on the tablet: Ui, Seongnam, and Bogam. Seeing her son, Seongnam, return safely, the queen consort was extremely happy. Because Seongnam and Bogam had both brought Teacher Park back to the palace, Her Highness decided that both would complete the mission together. The royal noble consort was demoted from 1st rank royal noble consort to 4th rank concubine, which was the lowest rank in the harem. The royal noble consort angrily smashed things in her room. She urged Ui to become the crown prince no matter what, so she could return to her rightful position. The high officials requested that His Majesty organize the final round of selection for the crown prince, but His Majesty said that the final round would not be held here. The final decision would be made by the Confucian scholars. Before the final exam took place, the queen consort, together with the best cheating squad in history, launched a high-stakes confrontation. She lightly lifted one of the examination tables and found a cheat sheet underneath. The inkstone also had one, and the underside of the table was no exception. Even the lid of the lunchbox had cheat sheets stuck to it. The queen consort read each piece of paper aloud. They were all materials that would help the Confucian scholars in front of her gain high positions and wealth. She laid out a condition: in the selection of the crown prince, they had to cast their precious vote for the designated person. She raised the pile of cheat sheets in her hand, saying that she had always secretly allowed these things to come and go, just because she didn't want innocent court maids delivering letters to be sacrificed unfairly. The Confucian scholars before me are all people who will become important ministers of the nation in the future. If you cheat like this today, what can you do for the royal court in the future? The queen consort said she would give them one last chance to choose openly and honestly, because whoever they chose would eventually become the new emperor. After speaking, she threw the pile of cheat sheets into the fireplace. After going outside, she reported to His Majesty that there was no cheating inside the hall. However, after being husband and wife for decades, he understood everything with just a glance from her. The Confucian scholars in the room also felt ashamed and threw their cheat sheets into the fireplace one after another. The queen consort's position and wisdom were truly admirable. Afterward, His Majesty summoned the 3 candidates to conduct individual examinations. The question was, if they ascended to the throne, how would they choose talented people for the country? Ui replied that he would continue to use the civil service examination system as it is now. His Majesty said nothing and turned to Bogam. Bogam replied that he would have them discuss the relationship between knowledge and character together. For example, whether someone with high knowledge but insufficient character could serve as an official in the court. His Majesty smiled and finally turned to Seongnam. Seongnam replied that he would simply ask them what the common people thought of the monarch. His Royal Highness said that speaking ill of the sovereign is a grave offense. But I believe that listening to the people's true feelings is of utmost importance. Punishment alone cannot force them to keep silent. Instead, we should create a channel to connect the people with the court. That way, the court can promptly understand the people's grievances. This is the long-lasting way to govern a nation. His Royal Highness was very pleased after hearing this and awarded him 5 points. The Chief General and Consort H. Wangs, who were nearby, learned of this result and began to feel extremely threatened. They decided they couldn't just sit around waiting to die. They had to come up with a plan. The Dowager Queen had also just heard the news and vented her anger on the Minister of War. At the same time, Tco Jung hurriedly asked 2 ministers to help her think of a solution. The Minister of War said that the only option left was to try and bribe the supervisor of the scholars, Teacher Park. That night, he brought 4 taels of gold to Teacher Park's residence. Little did they know, Teacher Park was far from needing money. High Consort heard that both the Chief General and the Dowager Queen were making plans, so she went to remind the Queen Consort to beware of them cheating again. But the Queen Consort remained very calm. What I want is to make them fight each other tooth and nail. Once both sides' strength has been significantly weakened, I will be in a more advantageous position. Meanwhile, inside the communal room, a scholar suddenly collapsed, complaining of a stomachache. The others hurriedly called for someone to take him out. Unexpectedly, he then secretly slipped into Consort H. Wang's palace and delivered important intelligence. Yui's approval rating was steadily declining, and even Bo Gam had surpassed him. Because someone had exposed his arrogant behavior in the palace, where he frequently bullied the palace staff, his approval rating was now very low. Consort H. Wang sighed helplessly. She decided to lower her head and go to see the Dowager Queen in her chambers. She proactively admitted her mistakes. The Dowager Queen revealed a clear look of arrogance. Consort H. Wang humbly begged her to choose Yui as crown prince and assured her that she would always serve her faithfully. The Chief General also knelt down, promising to hand over his power within the palace to her and guaranteeing that the entire H. Wang family would willingly obey her. The Dowager Queen did not reply, only giving them a profound expression. Afterward, she summoned Bo Gam and his mother, Tachiru Dung. The mother and son happily entered the palace, assuming they were about to hear good news. Guards. The Dowager Queen smiled and told Bo Gam to withdraw from the selection. Tachiru Dung could not accept this. Your Majesty said you would support Bo Gam. Why are you now telling him to withdraw? Silence, the Dowager Queen continued. Originally, they were only allowed to participate in the selection as mere background. Now it's time for them to step aside. Bo Gam also found it hard to accept this reality. He asked her, if you never wanted me to become crown prince from the beginning, then why did you encourage me to participate in the selection? In a horse race, if you want to stimulate the speed of the herd, you must have a leader in front. You were that horse. I never considered you a choice for the crown prince's position. Your mother's status is too low. You didn't really think you had a chance to become crown prince, did you? The Dowager Queen's words struck them to the core. But that was the harsh reality of life. Bo Gam stepped out and personally removed his nameplate, showing that he had truly withdrawn from the competition for the crown prince position. The court ladies reported to the Queen Consort that after Bo Gam withdrew from the selection, Yui's approval rating had skyrocketed. The Queen Consort told them to remain calm, as everything was part of her plan. If I have to lose like this, I refuse to accept it. Only Yui and Xiangnam remained, facing off against the Confucian scholars in the room. The scholars presented the two princes with hypothetical situations, and based on their handling of these, they would decide who should be chosen as crown prince. The queen punished Tco Zhang by relegating her to a menial position as a cleaning maid in the central palace for revealing information about the queen's inner workings to the military affairs secretary and spreading slanderous rumors intended to frame the queen. However, Tco Zhang had risen through the ranks from the queen's own inner circle, so she still held some affection for her. Outwardly, she was cold, giving her orders and making her work, but she also didn't forget to teach her about raising her children. She reprimanded Tco Zhang because her ambition had led to Bo Gam being exploited and hurt. Parents don't need to lead the way, but rather should show their children the path they've traveled so that the children won't walk down a dangerous road. She also made sure to speak with Bo Gam privately. Becoming crown prince isn't the only way to prove your worth. She hoped Bo Gam would stand alongside and support the crown prince. Bo Gam seemed to understand everything, and he begged her not to punish his mother. He knew that his mother was now blaming herself for what had happened. The queen then asked him if he was all right, and gently taking his hand, said, "If you're finding things difficult, just say so. If you're feeling hurt, show it. That's the only way others will know you're not okay." Tco Zhang, back in her former role, went to see Bo Gam and apologized to her son. Bo Gam, in his mother's arms, cried like a child. No matter how mature he might appear, the only person he could truly rely on was none other than his mother. The Confucian scholars had reached their decision, but before His Highness could announce the result, the Chief General reported a shocking, earth-shattering piece of news. "Your Highness has been cuckolded. in front of everyone, Seongnam is not your highness's biological son. He even instructed them to verify their blood relationship through a blood test. Unexpectedly, when 2 drops of blood were added to the bowl of water, they didn't mix. It turned out that the chief general and royal concubine Hwang had previously added white vinegar to the water, so no matter whose blood was dropped in, it wouldn't dissolve. The intelligent queen quickly sensed something was amiss. She suggested that the chief general and royal concubine Hwang also test their own blood using the same water. The result was the same, their blood didn't mix, which even baffled the royal physician. The queen asked, "Could it be that the 2 of you aren't blood relatives either?" The chief general bit his lip, not daring to say a word. Next, the queen declared that she could use another method to verify that Seongnam was indeed his highness's biological son, and she wanted to call all the princes to witness it together. Once everyone had gathered, the queen explained that there was a distinctive bone protrusion behind the ear, and all the princes inherited this trait. Speaking of this, the Grand Queen Dowager is the most familiar with it. It's thanks to the Grand Queen Dowager who has checked most of princes before. The Grand Queen Dowager reached out and touched each of them. When she got to Seongnam, everyone was incredibly tense. "Your Highness, is there a bone protrusion behind the ear?" "Indeed, there is such a bone." Next came the critical moment with Ui. The Grand Queen Dowager barely touched his ear before discovering there was no bone protrusion. At this point, royal concubine Hwang revealed a look of fear. The Grand Queen Dowager glared at her, then turned her head back. All of the princes have the same bone as His Highness. At this point, the Queen Dowager clarified that Seongnam wasn't conceived during the period of mourning for the late king, as he had already been conceived beforehand. It was just that the birth was delayed by 2 weeks. Therefore, everyone at the time believed it was an unclean matter and insisted on sending Seongnam away to be raised outside the palace, only to be allowed back after the mourning period was over. Then, His Majesty stepped forward and declared to everyone, "From now on, anyone who dares to question Seongnam's parentage or status will be considered guilty of treason and insulting the nation. They will be subjected to immediate and severe punishment." This chaotic situation was, more or less, resolved. His Majesty revealed the results of the scholars' selection, and Seongnam was chosen. The Queen Dowager sat down to talk to Seongnam, saying that she hadn't been able to protect him when he was younger, and it was her fault, apologizing to him. Seongnam said that he often saw his mother and elder brother visiting him back then, always secretly taking care of him, and he had never blamed his mother. The maternal love between them was incredibly touching. The next day was the Crown Prince's investiture ceremony. The Queen Dowager, seeing Seongnam before her, felt immensely proud. Her eyes were filled with joy, and she was even in the mood to tease him. She then gifted him a set of knee pads, telling Seongnam that now that he was the Crown Prince, he would need these knee pads often. Whether it's the scholars in the Hall of Worthies, or His Majesty, or even the common people, there will always be someone you are obligated to obey. Seongnam promised to be humble, study diligently, and strive to become a crown prince worthy of the position. The Queen Dowager was very pleased to hear this. Afterwards, Seongnam went to pay his respects to the Grand Queen Dowager at her palace. The Grand Queen Dowager, seeing the 4-clawed dragon robe on him, said, "Right now, you only have a 4-clawed dragon, and becoming king requires 5 claws. Until that extra claw is embroidered, nothing is certain." Seongnam, not backing down, replied, "Isn't the function of the claws more important than the number? I won't use those claws to rule and harm the people, but to protect them." After leaving, he encountered Consort Hwang and Ui. Now was the time to show his presence. Seongnam proactively greeted them. Ui could only obediently call him Crown Prince. He must have felt as uncomfortable as swallowing flies at that moment. After arriving at the Grand Queen Dowager's palace, the Grand Queen Dowager implied that Ui was Consort Hwang's adopted grandson, and she had a special affection for him. In fact, when she felt behind Yui's ear and didn't find that bone, she knew he wasn't His Majesty's biological son. So, using the excuse of protecting him, she wanted him to move out of the palace. Consort Hwang didn't dare say anything and could only agree. "But when he's taken out of the palace, I must return here." "Very good, you must return here. I will definitely make sure you can come back." On the other side, the queen consort began preparations for the crown prince's bride selection. However, to her surprise, the lists presented were entirely filled with people from the queen dowager's faction. The queen consort knew very well that if someone from the queen dowager's group became the crown princess, the crown prince's future would be incredibly difficult. So, she decided to personally find a suitable candidate. The queen consort took it upon herself to select the crown prince's bride. But, unexpectedly, on their wedding night, Seongnam left his new bride alone in their chamber. The poor crown princess had no idea what had happened. After all, she was someone the queen consort had personally chosen. It turned out that the last time the queen consort had been scouting potential candidates from various noble families at a clothing shop, she had immediately dismissed those who were arrogant and haughty, and only barely tolerated those who were meek and docile. When she saw the daughter of Minister Min carefully rearranging a messy pile of fabrics and dusting them off, the queen consort was very pleased and circled her name. At that moment, a commotion arose outside. The queen consort went to investigate and found that Yoonghwa was arguing with someone. A woman was trying to sell a hairpin on the street, but the buyer kept labeling her as a woman abandoned by her husband in order to drive down the price. The hairpin was originally worth 30 liang currency unit, but the buyer was trying to force her to accept only 10. Yoonghwa picked up the hairpin and asked the crowd, "Is there anyone who wants to buy this?" Everyone eagerly responded, wanting to purchase it. Then, Yoonghwa placed the hairpin on the ground and stomped on it, asking, "Does anyone still want to buy it?" People still raised their hands in agreement. "Do you see? No matter what I do, this hairpin doesn't lose its value. So, I hope you'll treat her fairly and offer a reasonable price." The merchant, unwillingly, said he could pay 20 liang. The queen consort immediately offered 30 liang. The merchant quickly countered, 35 liang. Then, the woman received 35 liang. Yoonghwa was incredibly grateful to the queen consort. The queen consort invited her for tea and asked why she hadn't registered for the bride selection. Yoonghwa said she already had someone she loved and showed the queen consort a portrait. The queen consort looked at it and thought, could this be fate? She told her that the person in the picture was the crown prince. Yoonghwa didn't believe her, because he had said his position was as a royal inspector in the court. The queen consort said, "I'm a member of the royal family. How could I not recognize the crown prince?" At this point, Yoonghwa was very surprised and ran home to tell her parents that she wanted to participate in the bride selection. "Father, I want to become the crown princess. You haven't submitted my birth information yet, have you? Well, now I want to participate. Let me participate. I can't wait any longer. I must become the crown princess. It has to be me." "Why do you have to become the crown princess?" the queen dowager suddenly asked. Remembering the queen consort's instructions not to reveal their fated meeting with the crown prince, along with the strict rules of the royal family, which would cause her to fail in the first round, Yoonghwa said she wanted to climb to the highest position. The queen dowager asked if she would agree to be her person, reporting information about the crown prince at all times, because the crown prince was newly appointed, and she wanted to protect her grandson. In order to marry the crown prince, Yoonghwa agreed, but her father was very worried. He asked the queen dowager why she had to choose Yoonghwa. He had followed the queen dowager for 20 years and knew that the queen dowager wanted to use his daughter as a shield and ultimately as a tool to overthrow the crown prince. The queen dowager said that she had promised his daughter would be the crown princess from the beginning, and that he didn't need to worry about anything else. In reality, the queen dowager's plan was to choose someone with the least desirable qualities. First, to be an obstacle to the crown prince, and second, to report everything about the crown prince. The Minister of War strongly opposed his daughter entering the palace. Unexpectedly, this time his daughter was so determined, insisting on entering the palace. The minister had always indulged his daughter, so he had no choice but to agree. The selection day arrived quickly. The girls, one by one, stepped over the charcoal brazier, embarking on their journey to enter the palace and be presented to the queen consort and the dowager empress. At this point, the queen consort intentionally made things difficult for Zhang Hua, while the dowager empress went to great lengths to protect her. The queen consort said she didn't fit the mold of a proper noble lady. "She reminds me of myself back then, seeing people during the first selection of imperial concubines, even more refined than them." I sincerely believe she is not appropriate for the position of crown princess. She will definitely advance the military advisor's daughter to the inner circle. And so, Zhang Hua came before the crown prince for a second assessment. The queen consort continued to deliberately make things difficult for Zhang Hua, provoking the dowager empress to step in and defend her. When Zhang Hua recited the answer that the queen consort had taught her beforehand, she received praise from His Highness and ultimately succeeded in being selected. When Zhang Hua met the queen consort again, she couldn't believe her eyes. The queen consort then told her that she had spoken with her father. It turned out that the queen consort had sought out the military advisor, saying she wanted to make her daughter the crown princess. Her father didn't know what to do. After all, everyone knew he was a supporter of the Dowager Empress. The queen consort then said, "The reason the Dowager Empress chose your daughter is that she wants her to be a sacrificial pawn. I'm choosing your daughter because she deserves to be the crown princess. However, to succeed, we can only use the Dowager Empress to ensure her success in becoming a consort." The queen consort also promised the military advisor that she herself would become Zhang Hua's support in the palace. At the same time, she hoped the military advisor would become the crown prince's backing, protecting his future throne. The two sides agreed. Zhang Hua also began practicing palace etiquette. Since she had never been constrained like this from a young age, she worried that she wouldn't be able to do it. Unexpectedly, the queen consort understood her concerns and wholeheartedly helped her. As she learned how to walk and stand, the queen consort whispered in Zhang Hua's ear, "I often visit the palace." The next day, she brought a pile of books for her to read. She felt discouraged looking at those 2,000 books, but the queen consort handed her a piece of paper, saying that she had written down all the important points to remember on it. She only needed to read this. And so, Zhang Hua smoothly passed the imperial consort selection exam. The grand wedding ceremony began. When the crown prince saw her face, he was extremely surprised. He didn't expect that the girl he liked was the military advisor's daughter, and that the military advisor was a supporter of the Dowager Empress. Could it be that Zhang Hua had been intentionally approaching him from the very beginning? The crown prince's abandoning the wedding night wasn't even settled when the queen consort was awakened by another shocking piece of news. Who brought whose child? This time, it was caused by the third prince, Mu Hu. Cho Yu had brought a child all the way to her door, requesting that the queen consort take it in. The queen consort chided her for being so heartless. How could she abandon a newborn child who hadn't even been weaned? Cho Yu said the baby was a little afraid of strangers, but if it got used to its mother's face before leaving, it would be even more painful. The queen consort immediately summoned Mu Hu. Suddenly seeing a baby appear, he found it quite adorable and interesting. "Little one, who does this cute little thing belong to?" Seeing his mother hadn't said a word, he realized it was his own child. The plump palace maid also nodded in confirmation. He quickly asked, "Where's the mother of the baby?" The plump palace maid replied, "After leaving the child, she just ran off." Mu Hu implored the Empress Dowager to help him find Cho Yu. She questioned, "Don't you realize what kind of situation you're in? Once someone discovers the existence of this child, how much turmoil will erupt?" He promised he would raise the child. The son before her infuriated the Empress Dowager to the point where she was grinding her teeth. If this child is branded as a bastard, his whole life will be ruined. But to Mu, he thought the child was so small, and he couldn't just abandon it. He then reassured his mother that he would take responsibility for raising it. The Empress Dowager said that if he was so willing to take responsibility, she would entrust the child to him. After the palace maid handed him the baby, the Empress Dowager immediately stood up and left, abandoning her son. Unexpectedly, the baby kept crying and wouldn't stop no matter what he did. Mu Hu hurriedly used a leather screen for cover. In case anyone heard the sound, the lives of both father and son would be at risk. He picked up the child and realized it probably needed a diaper change. He thought he wouldn't be able to hold on for long, but he still persevered to the end. Even though he was very sleepy, he let the baby fall asleep first before happily laying him down. As soon as he laid him down and was about to quickly go to the bathroom, the baby started crying loudly again. Mu Hu was both angry and endeared at this point. He had no choice but to hold the baby and go to the Empress Dowager. She scolded him. "Didn't you say you could raise the baby? he knelt down and begged his mother for help. "Since yesterday, I haven't had a single meal. But that's nothing. The hardest thing to endure is not being able to go to the bathroom." The Empress Dowager was speechless. Seeing that his mother had coaxed the baby to sleep soundly, Mu Hu was overjoyed, but when he saw her preparing to put him down, he quickly stopped her, saying that doing so would wake him up. Unexpectedly, the baby didn't cry anymore. He happily asked her if she had some kind of trick. The Empress Dowager said, "When caring for a baby, you have to pat him until he falls into a deep sleep before putting him down. Moreover, this child is exactly like you when you were little. He doesn't sleep much, and he'll still mischievously open his eyes even when he's laid down. To better take care of the baby." Mu started to study all kinds of books about raising children. The Empress Dowager saw her son so dedicated to caring for his grandson, and suddenly felt more at ease. Unexpectedly, the next day, the baby got sick. Seeing that Mu Hu seemed to be blaming himself, she comforted him. "This isn't your fault. Newborn babies are prone to getting sick like that." He once again begged her to help him find the baby's mother. "He's so young and doesn't have a mother. It's so pitiful." The Empress Dowager sternly asked him again if he was certain he could bear all the consequences that would follow. At that moment, Mu became even more determined. She ordered the plump palace maid to summon a wet nurse. Mu Hu had no idea that the wet nurse was actually Cho Yu, the girl he loved deeply. That night, the Empress Dowager didn't let her leave, but kept her in the palace to raise the baby, promising to let her appear when the time was right. She was observing Mu Hu to see if he could truly handle the responsibility of being a father. She reminded them one last time they absolutely couldn't do anything obvious before she came up with a suitable plan. This incredibly handsome crown prince, desired by all, was clueless about marital relations. On their wedding night, he left the crown princess waiting alone in the empty bridal chamber. So, first thing in the morning, Yonghua was furious and went to confront him. But instead, she stumbled upon a rather intimate scene. "If you're enjoying it, then let me ask you, why are you suddenly here?" She stammered that she had come to bring breakfast. Seeing her staring at him, with no intention of looking away, Seongnam asked her why she hadn't left yet. Yonghua quickly said she would leave the breakfast and go. But fate intervened, causing her to fall directly into his arms. Her heart rate skyrocketed. The eunuch standing nearby watched, transfixed. She inadvertently touched something and was lost in reverie. Seongnam reminded her to perhaps remove her hand. She snapped back to reality, apologized, and hurried out. The flustered feeling left her practically breathless. He watched her leave, feeling a pang of guilt and pity. He'd assumed she was working for the Dowager Queen, which was why he'd intentionally avoided consummating the marriage. The truth was, he hadn't slept a wink that night, replaying everything from his first encounter with Yonghua to the moment he fell in love with her. The eunuch reminded Seongnam that if he left the bridal chamber like this, Yonghua would cry all night. Sitting there, she wasn't crying, she was drinking to cheer herself up, while wondering why she was being treated so coldly. Could it be that she'd misinterpreted everything? Or wasn't she attractive enough? But thinking back to their promises, that couldn't be the case. Which left only one other possibility. Seongnam didn't know how to be a husband. When she tried to question him about it, he told her to report to the Dowager Queen that they hadn't consummated their marriage. The Dowager Queen had already heard that Seongnam was being considerate, and complained that she had meddled too much in his affairs to even know this. Then Yonghua hastily interjected, saying that while he had left the bridal chamber last night, it was due to pressing matters of state, and he had returned well after midnight. Thanks to her intervention, Seongnam's tense situation with the Dowager Queen was diffused. The Queen Consort, upon hearing this, was shocked. How could this be? Isn't that the woman Seongnam loves most? Soon after, Yonghua sought her out, believing she must know the reason. The Queen Consort immediately comforted her. "The palace is buzzing with rumors. You must be very upset." Yonghua said she was indeed upset. But wasn't that because the Queen Consort had never taught Seongnam the ways of consummation? The Queen Consort admitted she hadn't. Yonghua thought to herself, so that's it, and continued to press the issue, asking if the most important duty upon marrying into the royal family wasn't to produce an heir. Creating a successor is your responsibility, along with Seongnam. An average person might not teach their child about consummation, but as queen consort, you should fulfill this duty. Another mother-in-law might have flown into a rage upon hearing such words, but the queen consort acknowledged her fault and even promised to choose an auspicious date for their consummation. Yonghua then asked, "Does that even require choosing a date?" This question was truly intriguing. Later, the queen consort summoned Seongnam to talk. She said she understood he had suddenly become very busy. Seongnam replied that since it was just the two of them, there was no need for formality. She could ask him anything. The queen consort asked if he didn't like Yonghua. "No, I do." "If it isn't dislike, then why did you leave her alone on your wedding night?" But he didn't answer. She'd already guessed the reason and said bluntly, "Yonghua is the one I chose." "You chose her, mother?" The queen dowager recounted to Seongnam her accidental encounter with Tronghua outside the palace. She praised her intelligence and confidence, but admitted that she chose her as the crown princess for another reason. He assumed it was to sway her father to their side, but she said it was because Tronghua loved him. When a mother sees someone truly love her son like that, how could she not love that girl in return? Upon hearing this, Seongnam's face brightened. The queen dowager reminded him, "You are the sole reason she has entered this palace, so from now on, you are the one who must cherish and love her." "Yes, mother." His face immediately lit up. Seongnam accidentally discovered the diary his deceased elder brother had left behind. The queen dowager compared it with her son's medical records from when he was alive and, indeed, found something amiss. It wasn't suicide. Her eldest son had been murdered. It turned out to be the royal physician, but more solid evidence was needed, so she summoned the royal physician back to the palace. The commander-in-chief was stunned upon seeing him. His daughter had mentioned a plan to bring him back, but hadn't arranged for it yet. The royal physician expressed his gratitude to the queen dowager. She stated that she needed to work with him to uncover the true culprit who had harmed her eldest son. At the same time, her subordinates had found new evidence. The prescription provided by the outside doctor, known as Great Physician, was identical to the medicine that the former crown prince had used. The queen dowager told Seongnam that they must find that Great Physician, no matter what. He is the former royal physician of the late crown prince. She also instructed him to spread the news to consort Gwai-in's people to see how they would react. When Seongnam found the Great Physician, he bluntly stated that he knew his true identity and asked why he had disappeared without a trace after his brother's death. He remained steadfast, replying that the former crown prince had used the same medication as his brother, but the prescription he provided had no problems. Seongnam presented the autopsy report of his brother, but the great physician mistook it for the former crown prince's report, because their manner of being killed was identical to that in the report. "Are you saying that the former crown prince and my brother were murdered using the same method?" In reality, this great physician had deliberately appeared so that Seongnam would find him. His aim was to have the queen dowager uncover the cause of the former crown prince's death herself, hoping to bring the current crown prince down. But they didn't know that Seongnam had people following that meeting. He told his mother that the great physician's words weren't entirely trustworthy. "To find the true cause of our elder brother's death, we absolutely must access the main hall, where the records of the former crown prince's death are kept. But approaching that place without permission is against the law." At that time, they were also unaware that the two royal physicians had sought out Yui, plotting with him to rebel. Despite his maternal grandfather, the commander-in-chief, objecting, Yui still wanted to seize the throne, even if it meant killing his own father. Meanwhile, his mother was carefully preparing tea for the queen mother. However, the queen mother was also a sly fox, and how could she be easily fooled like that? Knowing that the tea was poisoned, she deliberately dropped and shattered the cup, then stated that their tea meeting had ended. Afterward, she revealed her hand to royal consort H1, saying that because she poisoned her, it proved that she had learned something she shouldn't have. Who is Yui's real father? What? Infertility? How could the crown prince be infertile? Rumors flew through the palace that the crown prince was infertile. The queen mother, indifferent and cold to the prince, went to meet with the other princes to investigate. The rumor had originated from the Grand Empress Dowager's private chambers. The queen consort, wanting to stop the rumors from spreading, immediately arranged for the crown prince and princess to consummate their marriage. She even hired a professional court lady to provide comprehensive coaching on the matter. The court lady said she would definitely ensure the crown prince was successful on the first try, because she had never failed before. The queen consort was overjoyed to hear this. Finally, I'm going to be holding my grandchild. After that, everyone went into a state of high alert. The court lady asked the eunuch about the crown prince's level of sexual knowledge. He said the crown prince had a firm grasp of theoretical knowledge, but no practical experience whatsoever. He doesn't even seem interested in women, so he couldn't really guess at the crown prince's situation. The maids say that the crown princess knows the theory like the back of her hand and doesn't need any further guidance. Most importantly, she is very enthusiastic and eager. With enthusiasm, it is even more important to awaken instinct. Every day, the crown prince had to gulp down a bowl of herbal medicine made from 12 different ingredients. The crown prince initially planned to sneakily pour it out while the court lady went out to grind herbs, but the court lady warned him that if he didn't drink it, the gods would report it to the queen consort. The crown prince had no choice but to grit his teeth and finish it. Meanwhile, the crown princess was soaking in a tub to infuse her body with fragrance. Moreover, this particular fragrance could travel hundreds of yards. At the same time, the crown prince had to do 100 quick gym reps. This was supposed to promote blood circulation, thereby awakening the instincts in the body. Before long, the wedding night arrived. The crown princess was eagerly awaiting the crown prince's arrival, but because it wasn't yet the auspicious hour, the two sat and waited. To ease the tense atmosphere, the crown princess invited the crown prince to have a few drinks, hoping they could be as close as they were when they first met on the island. Unexpectedly, the crown prince couldn't hold his liquor very well, and, after only a few drinks, fell asleep until the next morning. The rooster was crowing, but all he could remember was kissing the crown princess. He had been planning to quietly pull his hand away, but the crown princess woke up. He had no choice but to pretend to be asleep so the crown princess could admire his handsome features. Meanwhile, the hospital breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing the news that the crown prince and princess had finally consummated their marriage successfully. But the Grand Empress Dowager was far from calm. What if the crown princess conceived a crown grandson? Then there would be no excuse to drive her out of the palace, and it would only strengthen the crown prince's future claim to the throne. The crown prince asked the crown princess, "Did we really sleep together last night?" The crown princess said, "Of course not. I am not the type of person to take advantage of the situation, and I don't want to experience my first night that way." The crown prince was relieved to hear this, but suddenly the crown princess continued, "I have already seen everything I needed to see," leaving the crown prince embarrassed and stunned. Had his precious body been exposed? He even blamed her. "Are you crazy, crown princess?" But she explained, "Because there are rumors circulating. I naturally have to confirm the state of my husband's body." Then, she asked the crown prince, "Normal couples can do that kind of thing. Why can't we? Is there something I shouldn't be seeing?" The crown prince said, "I don't want to." But which married couple still needs to ask the other's permission to consummate their marriage? Shouldn't both sides be willing? The crown prince awkwardly made an excuse to leave. The crown princess was deeply saddened. Doesn't the crown prince like to touch a woman he doesn't like? And I don't want to be touched by someone who doesn't like me either. Who says I don't like it? Unfortunately, the crown princess didn't hear this sentence clearly and sat there disappointed. The crown prince, after stepping outside, was still struggling to recall the events of the previous night, but could only remember up to the kiss. He felt something was off and tried harder, yet could only recall as far as lying down. So, whether or not they had consummated their marriage last night had become a monumental question in his mind. The queen consort, even if she died, could never have imagined that her husband's throne, the one she had always revered, had been seized by framing the previous crown prince. Inside the palace, she had only intended to find the cause of her son's death. Therefore, she went to see His Majesty to request the autopsy report of the former crown prince and reinvestigate the cause of his death, because her investigation revealed her son's death was similar to the previous crown prince's. But not only did His Majesty refuse, he also became furious, scolding the queen for not understanding the situation. Although he had been on the throne for over 20 years, there were still treacherous subjects stirring up trouble, trying to seize the throne. And the queen, who should be wholeheartedly supporting him, was now raising such questions. The queen had no choice but to temporarily set it aside, relying on herself to continue the investigation. She was still hoping to find clues from the records of past kings to uncover the cause of death. Unexpectedly, the crown prince said that the records there had already been destroyed by someone else, who, ultimately, was trying to conceal the truth. The queen thought about it and still felt something wasn't right. She thought that the court historian at the time must have recorded such an important matter, and that historian just so happened to be the father of the crown prince's tutor. Therefore, the queen went to meet the crown prince's tutor. Upon arriving, however, he claimed he had never heard of such a thing. The queen then reminded him, "It is said that not long after the autopsy of the former crown prince, your father passed away suddenly. Could it really just be a coincidence?" But Tutor Park argued, even if father died, he would have protected that record. That means he wanted to conceal the truth. But the queen retorted, "What if your father died in order to protect that record?" Thus, Tutor Park retrieved his father's hidden journal. After reading it, he was incredulous. He then handed the journal to the queen, but on the condition that only she could see it, and no one else could know. That year, Tutor Park's father had recorded the entire autopsy process of the former crown prince. Through the examination process, the final conclusion of the royal physician was that the former crown prince did not die from leukemia, but was poisoned to death by a villain. The clearest indication was a black spot in his mouth. Moreover, his throat was swollen, and there were scratch marks on his chest. And these scratches were caused by scratching his chest after being poisoned, because of the excruciating pain. At that time, the late king ordered that they should act as if they didn't know about this, and not pursue the cause of death. At the same time, he also told the historian to erase everything when he died, but in the end, the historian secretly recorded it anyway. The queen trembled after reading it because the Grand Prince Li Ho was none other than the current emperor. In that case, His Majesty must have known long ago that the former crown prince was poisoned to death. At this moment, someone came to report that something had happened in the watchtowers. A girl had committed suicide, but the wound was very similar to that of the former crown prince, with a black spot in her mouth and many other similarities. And before she died, she had drunk some kind of water. The queen remembered the record that before her son died, he used this water to detoxify himself every day. She then took out the silver hairpin from her hair, and sure enough, it tested positive for poison. It turned out that what had poisoned the crown prince to death was precisely this water. So, she immediately went to find Qian Zhongdian and said, "It was his son who killed my son." Qian Zhongdian simply said he didn't know. Even if he did know, he wouldn't have stopped it. Zhongdian angrily asked, "How many more people have to be sacrificed?" But Qian Zhongdian replied, "If you want to blame someone, blame the Queen Dowager. What right does she have to demand an end to all the conflicts?" And Zhongdian knew that Qian Zhongdian's son wanted to assassinate not only the crown prince. Indeed, he was also using this poison to kill high-ranking officials. The crown prince had guessed that his next target would definitely be his own father. The intelligent crown prince had figured out that the royal physician in the palace was plotting treason. Unable to dissuade his grandson, the chief general could only seek out his daughter to stop this self-destructive act. Because when a son commits a mistake, the mother has the responsibility to guide him back to the right path. Unexpectedly, Consort Huang also refused, saying that living a listless life like this was worse than dying early. Hearing this, the chief general looked at his daughter with anger and indignation. On her side, the Queen Dowager clearly knew that Yuaisong was not her biological grandson, but she still hadn't taken action. It was solely because she wanted to torment Consort Huang and vent her anger for the crown being cuckolded. Killing Yuaisong now would only cause her a little pain. That would be too easy for her. Now, she wanted to make Consort Huang feel like she was constantly sitting on hot coals, just like Qian Zhongdian. Years ago, the Queen Dowager killed all of her sons, but she deliberately left one alive, just to torment her. If all her sons had died, she would have died with them. It must be said that the Queen Dowager was truly vicious, but she didn't expect Yuaisong to be the royal physician's son. The Queen Dowager slammed the table in anger. The biological father of her foster grandson is actually that lowly physician. The Empress Dowager ordered that he be brought to her immediately. But the senior palace maid reported that he had already been taken by the Central Palace. The Central Palace, you say? Meanwhile, Zhang Dian caught the royal physician red-handed, rummaging through Qian Shi's autopsy documents. She also said that she already knew that he had poisoned her son to death. Next, how would Zhang Dian deal with this royal physician when he was also a prince of the former dynasty? Upon learning that the crown princess might not be able to conceive, which would affect his claim to the throne, the crown prince still had no intention of deposing her. Because he knew that pregnant women with heart conditions would face even greater risks to their lives during childbirth, and could even die. For the crown prince, the crown princess's health was the most important thing. In fact, the royal physician had diagnosed that the crown princess might be pregnant. Zhang Dian wanted the crown prince to focus on taking care of his daughter-in-law, not wanting him to trouble himself with investigating the truth behind his brother's death. But the crown prince also didn't want his mother to have to bear everything alone. Zhang Dian told the crown prince, "Fulfilling your duty as crown prince is helping me already. Now there's a new life in the crown princess's womb, and she must be feeling confused. Moreover, the crown princess has a heart condition, and her pregnancy will definitely be more unstable. This will be very difficult for her. Now is when the crown princess needs you by her side to take care of her the most." It must be said that Zhang Dian is the most devoted mother-in-law I have ever seen. The other concubines, upon hearing the news that the crown princess was with child, were delighted for the queen consort. This would only solidify the crown prince's position further. If she were to successfully give birth to the first grandson, there would be even less to worry about. But at this moment, royal consort Huang invited them for tea. They felt certain that she still hadn't given up on her ambitions. But the crown prince was chosen based on merit. Royal consort Huang's actions were truly shameless, so the concubines all decided to ditch her, opting to go congratulate Her Majesty the Queen Consort instead, casting their appointment with royal consort Huang into oblivion. The concubines vied with each other to care for the crown princess, so the queen consort could manage the inner palace with peace of mind. However, the queen consort declined, not wanting anyone to bother the crown princess. She felt the best way to care for her was to allow her to focus on nurturing the pregnancy. Meanwhile, every night, the crown prince would read stories to help the crown princess fall asleep. At the same time, he also discovered the crown princess's diary. Everything was written about the crown prince's preferences. Moreover, it also contained her wish, which was to hold the crown prince's hand and go everywhere in the palace together, living a married life like ordinary people. She only hoped that the crown prince could open his heart to her soon. Although the crown prince had loved the crown princess for a long time, he had never said it, leading the crown princess to believe that he didn't like her. In order to see the crown prince more often, she would always go to the route he was sure to pass, secretly admiring her beloved crown prince from afar. But because she kept running around like that, the palace maids spread rumors, saying that the crown princess couldn't possibly be pregnant. The Dowager Queen, upon hearing the news, barged into the queen consort's palace, saying, "Is it true that the crown princess is not pregnant?" She even brought the royal physician to take her pulse again. It was still the same royal physician, but this time he said the crown princess wasn't pregnant, but that she had a heart condition, leading to an erratic pulse. The Dowager Queen immediately berated the crown princess's father for daring to bring a sick daughter into the palace as a consort. Moreover, she had already heard from outside the palace that the matchmakers all said the crown princess wouldn't be living in peace in the selection. The queen consort said that she had learned about the crown princess and that her free-spirited personality caused the matchmakers to misjudge her. But the reason she chose Chengha as the crown princess was because, in order to be the future queen consort, she must have extraordinary abilities. If the crown princess's illness wasn't incurable, she guaranteed she would take good care of her and it wouldn't affect her ability to conceive. The queen consort pleaded with the Dowager Queen not to use the crown princess's health as an excuse. But the Dowager Queen kept saying that a heart condition would cause the pregnancy to be unstable and there was a risk of miscarriage. No matter how much the queen consort assured her, the Dowager Queen refused to agree, because she was deliberately nitpicking. But in reality, the crown princess was already pregnant. It was because the Dowager Queen had met with the royal physician in private and made him put on this act. She even prepared medicine to make the fetus in the crown princess's womb disappear. Then she would have an excuse to depose the crown princess. 2 daughters-in-law, but only one can be chosen to be protected. What choice should the queen consort make? If she doesn't hand over the painting evidence to the Dowager Queen, she will use the excuse that the crown princess cannot bear children to force His Highness to depose the crown princess. But if the painting is discovered, it cannot be used as evidence to clear the name of her eldest daughter-in-law and grandson outside the palace. The Queen Dowager summoned Master Park to inquire about evidence, specifically the records of Master Park's father. But he had already handed those records over to His Royal Highness, advising him to destroy the evidence as soon as possible. Otherwise, should it be leaked, it would lead to widespread chaos, and the common people would suffer the most. However, His Royal Highness remained hesitant. This was because he obtained the throne after the Queen Mother assassinated the previous crown prince. This matter had tormented him for over 20 years. As for the Queen Dowager's desire to clear her eldest daughter-in-law's name, the royal physician was the only remaining evidence. However, her subordinates reported that his whereabouts were unpredictable. In the palace laundry, it was suggested that if they kept watch at the former Queen Dowager's residence, the royal physician, being a dutiful son, would certainly come to pay his respects. But the former Queen Dowager refused to speak. The Queen Dowager reminded her, "If your son falls into the hands of others, he will certainly die. I guarantee I will spare his life." But the Queen Dowager was still a step behind. At this point, the Grand Royal Dowager met with Commander Ling to threaten him, saying that if he wanted to save H. Wang's concubine and Yue Song's lives, he had to bring the royal physician into the palace. Commander Ling, worried that the truth about him being Yue Song's biological father would be revealed, had his men surround the royal physician. He also said, "How could I possibly be on the same boat as you?" Commander Ling didn't know that the royal physician before him was the prince of the previous dynasty. He even approached him, asking where the prince was. Taking the opportunity, the royal physician seized Commander Ling as a hostage, dragged him to a secluded place, and revealed his identity. Commander Ling immediately apologized, urging the royal physician to flee, saying he had already prepared a hiding place. But the royal physician wasn't easily fooled. He also knew he couldn't leave the palace alive, so first he had to avenge his brothers, causing Commander Ling to meet his end there. Then, he went to find his next enemy, the Grand Royal Dowager. But he didn't expect to fall into another dangerous situation. The one sitting inside wasn't the Grand Royal Dowager, but only the head court lady who served her. H. Wang's concubine asked him, heartbroken, "Who are you, really? Have you been using me all along? Was there ever a moment, even for a second, when you genuinely cared?" The royal physician admitted that he had always considered her merely a tool for producing an heir. Hearing this, H. Wang's concubine was stunned and burst into tears. Just then, the Queen Dowager was rushing over, witnessing firsthand the Grand Royal Dowager destroying all the evidence. She said, "It's all over," and added that there was a good show going on inside. Inside, the royal physician had revealed that he had just killed Commander Ling. H. Wang's concubine couldn't accept it, didn't want to believe it. At this moment, Yue Song arrived, saying, "Only by killing can I live." With that, he stabbed the royal physician, sending him to his death. The royal physician said he would rather die by his son's hand, and told him he had to live on because he was the true prince of the future, destined to inherit the throne. Hearing about his parentage, Yue Song remembered when he had once asked the royal physician, "What is your greatest wish?" He had replied that it was to live happily with his elderly mother and his son. At this moment, Yue Song realized he had been manipulated by the Grand Royal Dowager. Earlier, the Grand Royal Dowager had deliberately met him, saying, "You've fallen for the royal physician's trap. He is actually the prince of the previous dynasty, leading the rebels, and urged Yue Song to kill him to redeem himself." Seeing his biological father die right before his eyes, where could Yue Song possibly turn now? Meanwhile, in the Queen's palace, the Queen Consort was dedicating all her efforts to finding evidence to clear the injustice and bring her eldest daughter-in-law and grandson back to the palace as soon as possible. Little did she know that her eldest son had been murdered in such a horrific manner. The royal physician had deliberately inserted needles into acupoints, causing the crown prince's internal organs to hemorrhage, and had also been giving him poison daily to cover his tracks, planning to stop treatment completely and then let the crown prince die. The queen consort furiously demanded, "He placed such trust in you. How could you cruelly murder my son right before my very eyes?" But the royal physician retorted, "His mother, the former queen consort, lost 4 children. Now, when he looks at you, your majesty, he involuntarily remembers the painful way she said goodbye to her 4 children. He also feels regret over the crown prince's passing. But don't forget that all of this is because His Royal Highness's position on the throne came about through bloodshed. He had to watch his brothers die and lives in constant fear, never knowing when he might be harmed. He has lived in immense suffering, so this act of revenge is perfectly justified." The queen consort, however, disagreed vehemently. "What crime did my son commit? My son has nothing to do with your revenge." Finally, the cause of her son's death had been discovered. She had consistently used the excuse of finding the cause of death to continue searching for evidence. But now, the evidence has all been burned by the Dowager Queen. Whether the eldest daughter-in-law and the royal grandson can return to the palace later, and whether the crown princess can keep the child in her womb, remains to be seen. This is the final battle between the Dowager Queen and the queen consort. I will not let you find the cause of the crown prince's death. That is how I will protect my son. Affectionately, she too will use her own means to protect her children. The Dowager Queen, unwilling to let the queen consort discover the truth that she had killed the former crown prince, did not hesitate to strike against her own grandson. First, she ordered someone to give the crown princess a medicine to induce a miscarriage. Although the crown princess found the medicine bitter, the crown prince comforted her. Bitter medicine cures illness, so the crown princess forced herself to drink it all. Unexpectedly, the royal physician later returned the medicine to the Dowager Queen, saying that the crown princess's child was already dead in the womb and there was no need for the medicine anymore. He also stated that, based on the crown princess's physical condition, she would not be able to conceive again. Subsequently, the head court lady discovered Muon's secret, that he had fathered a child with a maidservant in the 2-story quarters. The queen consort, upon hearing this, rushed to the scene. The Dowager Queen berated them, saying, "Like mother, like son, indeed," and ordered His Highness to expel the child and the woman from the palace. However, Mohu stepped forward at this point, declaring his intention to marry the mother of the child. The Dowager Queen immediately refused, stating, "There is no precedent, from ancient times to the present, for a prince to marry a commoner." Not to mention the son of the queen consort. Each prince represents the face of the royal family. Ignoring that he might give up his status as a prince, the queen consort was also surprised by her son's responsible spirit. But, of course, the Dowager Queen would not agree. Mu, however, remained resolute in his refusal to abandon the child and the woman he loved. The queen consort then stepped in to mediate, saying, "Mu has not broken any laws, it's just that there's no precedent. If there is no precedent, then let Muon create one. While he can't take her as his primary wife, taking her as a concubine is still possible." Finally, His Highness agreed to consider it. Seeing this, the Dowager Queen changed the subject, saying, "This is but a small matter. The most important thing now is that the crown princess is unable to conceive." At this moment, the royal physician requested an audience. The queen consort said that she had summoned him. She asked the royal physician what he had been putting in the crown princess's medicine. The royal physician said that it was all medicine to treat her heart condition. The queen consort continued, "Why did you not put the medicine given to you by the Dowager Queen in?" The royal physician said that the medicine was harmful to the fetus, so he didn't dare use it. How could he, as the royal physician, do such a thing? The Dowager Queen claimed that the royal physician was fabricating stories. At this point, His Highness could no longer tolerate his mother's words and told the queen consort to explain. She said that before the pregnancy of the crown princess was stable, she had intentionally concealed the truth in order to protect the crown princess's child. The royal physician also stated that if the crown princess rested well, she would definitely be able to give birth to the heir apparent. The Dowager Queen said, "They are conspiring to make up stories." "Your Majesty," His Highness was still unsure of what to choose. All the ministers were demanding the execution of Yuesong and the deposing of the concubine. But even though Yuaisong was not his biological son, he was the son of his blood brother. His Highness did not want this throne stained with more blood, because the smell of blood from 20 years ago still prevented him from resting easy. So, for the past 20 years, His Highness had been striving to be a sage ruler. But if he revealed the truth of what happened years ago, the legitimacy of his throne would be questioned. The Crown Prince also came to ask His Highness to reveal the truth, so that his older brother's innocence could be restored. His Highness said, "Words alone are not enough for conviction. There is no evidence at present." The Crown Prince directly questioned his father, "Aren't the records of secret affairs in your hands?" But His Highness still said, "That evidence is not enough." The Crown Prince could only go to his mother to discuss the matter. The Queen Consort comforted her son. "It's not an easy decision for your father to make. After all, it is something that will threaten his throne. Moreover, if that happens, the person who will be held accountable will be your mother." After comforting her son, the Queen Consort then went to persuade His Highness. "Even if the events of the past are revealed, the fact that you are a wise and benevolent ruler will absolutely not change. Not only do I think so, but I believe that heaven and all the people think so." Having said that, she handed over the autopsy report of her eldest son to His Highness, asking His Highness to correct the mistakes of the past and record all the truth, so that whoever deserves to be reinstated may be reinstated, so that the former Crown Prince and her son can have accurate information about their deaths recorded. "This is the last way for me to protect your Majesty, and also the only way to protect the last bloodline of my son." After days and nights of deliberation, His Highness thought of his son, poisoned to death. In order to prevent further sacrifices, he finally decided to meet the Dowager Empress, his mother, and said, "I will reveal the truth of what happened that year." He also stated that he had witnessed the entire scene with his own eyes. No matter how much the Dowager Empress wanted him to forget the past, he walked straight ahead without looking back. His Highness then revealed the truth to all the high-ranking officials. Even though everyone opposed him because it would be detrimental to his position on the throne, His Highness said, "My own peace comes from the stability of the world." Ultimately, His Highness announced the restoration of the late Crown Prince's residence outside the palace and permanently confined the Dowager Empress, his own mother, within the palace. For the Dowager Empress, this was a devastating blow. In the end, she chose to commit suicide because, in her world, there was no one worthy of punishing her. His Highness publicly announced the cause of death of the late Crown Prince after a thorough investigation, clearing the name of the late Crown Prince's wife and child. Consequently, they were welcomed back into the palace. The Crown Princess finally breathed a sigh of relief, saying, "Our eldest son can finally rest in peace." The Crown Prince happily opened his arms to welcome the grandson heir. He had fulfilled his promise to the boy ahead of schedule. Afterwards, he led the Crown Princess for a walk to every corner of the royal palace. Suddenly, the Crown Princess spotted a water jar. She rushed forward, momentarily forgetting that she was pregnant. The Crown Prince said, "This is a water jar. It serves as a symbol for fire prevention." The Crown Princess didn't understand why it was considered a symbol. Because a large fire is like a fierce and terrifying demon. If a fire breaks out in the palace, seeing one's own reflection in the jar will scare them into running away. But the Crown Princess corrected him. "But I don't see a fierce and terrifying demon. I see a handsome and dashing god." Upon hearing this, the Crown Prince's face suddenly changed, and he unexpectedly walked ahead shyly. The Crown Princess hurriedly took small steps to follow behind, after the court ladies reminded her not to run. The Crown Prince deliberately slowed down, promising the Crown Princess that they would have a meal and talk together tomorrow. Upon returning, he opened the Crown Princess's wish list and crossed off the wishes that had been fulfilled. After school, the younger brother ran to the Crown Prince and said, "Today is the best time to take the Crown Princess to watch the meteor shower. Furthermore, it will be very short, so you have to hurry." Upon hearing this, the Crown Prince hurriedly ran to the Crown Princess, took her hand, and pulled her along with him. The Crown Princess didn't know where the Crown Prince was taking her, but it turned out it was to watch the meteor shower. The two of them each silently made their own wishes. Looking at the adorable and lively Crown Princess beside him, the Crown Prince pulled her into his arms and asked, "Why did you say nothing happened on our wedding night?" The crown princess said, "Because you didn't remember." So the crown prince said, "I remember now," and then kissed the person he loved the most. The next day, watching the crown prince playing with the grandson heir, the crown princess said, "My wish last night was to give birth to a son who resembles you, crown prince." But the crown prince's wish was to have a daughter who resembles the crown princess. Actually, it seems to me that the crown prince didn't really care whether the crown princess gave birth to a son or a daughter, because he was still maintaining the throne on behalf of his older brother, ultimately to pass it back to the grandson heir. He looked seriously at the grandson heir and secretly vowed, "Your Majesty, please maintain this relationship, and I will protect your country." Word spread that the prince had climbed onto the palace roof, claiming he wanted to fly to the moon. The queen consort, frantic, rushed to the scene. This was her most authentic self, perpetually running to protect her cub sons. It was precisely because of her boundless and kind heart that each character had a resolution by the end of the film. She fulfilled her promise to the late queen consort, ensuring her grandson would live on. She told Yuisong that she would always be watching him. In reality, she intentionally provoked Yuisong so that he would strive to live on for his mother's sake. Meanwhile, consort Huang, her mind troubled, hallucinated that she still lived in the palace, still a noblewoman high above, instructing her son to study and practice diligently. For those two, perhaps this was the best possible ending. And the queen consort continued to care for them. The late queen consort was posthumously restored to her position as Grand Empress Dowager. Remembering that her grandson was still alive, she made an effort to eat, using him as motivation to keep living. Mo On had completely changed, dedicating himself to learning how to raise children. He was consulting the concubines to gain more experience, meticulously taking notes on each of their methods. Bogum, meanwhile, was wholeheartedly supporting the crown prince. His mother complained that he didn't visit her in the palace often enough, but Mo On's troops still entered the palace regularly. Bogum explained that the princes resided outside the palace, and it wasn't appropriate for them to visit too frequently. However, he promised to visit his mother whenever he came to see the crown prince. Ti So-young was delighted to hear this. On the other side, royal noble consort Cao also brought the empress's secret manual, which had helped the crown princess conceive, to give to her son. Unexpectedly, her son refused his mother's kind gesture, as his wife was already pregnant. Royal noble consort Cao couldn't stop smiling when she heard the news. Meanwhile, this portly prince was desperately trying to lose weight, saying he wanted to become as handsome as his brothers. His mother laughed, telling him he wasn't fat, and that he should eat whatever he wanted. Only when he was full would he have the energy to lose weight. Under the empress's guidance, the mother-child relationships within the palace were all very harmonious. Then, out of the blue, Jai Sung came to see her. The empress thought that she finally had some free time and could chat with her son more. But he told her that he wanted to leave the palace. The empress was extremely reluctant to let him go. Jai Sung took his mother's hand, saying he didn't want to keep hiding behind her shadow. From now on, he wanted to live true to himself and learn to take responsibility for himself. Although heartbroken, the empress was moved to tears because all of her children had grown up. The next day, as the children said their farewells one by one, it was clear that the empress had raised them very well. From childhood to adulthood, the brotherly bonds remained strong. After the fourth son left, the empress often opened paintings to look at them to ease her longing. And Jai Sung would paint his life outside the palace and send it back to his mother, the Empress Dowager, so she could rest assured. He had finally achieved his dream of being a princess. What we admire most is that even though the crown princess arrived late to a gathering, the empress did not punish her at all, because she didn't want to become like her mother-in-law, a pitifully malicious person. The empress even took the crown princess to the 2 pavilions that she had built with her own hands. This was a place that had helped countless girls. There, she told the crown princess, "From now on, let's be a support for them together." The crown princess readily agreed. At that moment, a girl came forward. It was the person the empress had saved before. She gave the empress a vase of flowers to express her gratitude. The empress said she would place the vase in the palace, fill it with beautiful flowers, and always remember her. Finally, the crown prince held an umbrella for the empress. Perhaps everyone desires such a mother-child relationship. The son knows his mother's life has not been easy, so he puts forth his best effort. And the mother holds up an umbrella to shield her children, wholeheartedly protecting the good things in their hearts. In the days to come, she will once again hold up an umbrella to protect the great heir. That is also the duty of the Empress, passed down through generations.